Thank you. You may be seated. We're happy to have the contingent from Greenville County here, and Jeff Davis is here. And Jeff, take a stand, and let's give it up for Jeff and Greenville folks. And of course, in Spartanburg County, we have Frank Teller. Come, Frank.
I don't have any trouble introducing
Drum
myself.
roll, please. Becky McLaughlin is our executive committee woman representing Spartanburg County to all of South Carolina.
Thank you very much. And I should say that Frank has been fighting a cough and laryngitis all week, so he had to give the mic to me, and I'm happy to take it. One thing that I want to say as we get started, we are live streaming, and help me, Debbie, if I do this wrong. This is the County of Common Sense, and there will be a red button that says live. If you would like to take out your phones and text that to somebody that's not here, they can actually hear the remarks live today, which is a blessing. And I'll just give a plug to Kevin Baer, who is a fellow Floridian. And sometimes we call ourselves halfbacks. Doug and I went from West Virginia to Florida, raised our kids, spent 30 years there, and came halfway back. So we're halfbacks, and there's lots of us. YouTube channel, the County of Common Sense. And Kevin's got several videos on that channel from our camp group. He joined us about 6 weeks ago. And so some of you, Mr. Stumbo, who joined us at that time, are already famous on that channel, Mr. Dismukes. So I am going to go ahead and let David Stumbo start. He is a solicitor for District 8. Good. And a candidate for Attorney General. So I give you David Stumbo.
Good morning, patriots of Greenville and Spartanburg County. Thank y'all for having me today. It is a beautiful Saturday morning in South Carolina, and it's great to be with y'all. I love having meetings like this started with prayer. And thank you, Larry, for praying over the meeting, because to me, what we're doing here, and I've been encouraged as I've traveled the state for the past months. Vanessa and I have been able to see so many meetings now that people are talking about Christ and really incorporating their faith into what we're doing politically. And to me, that's our only hope, y'all. We can talk about all day long. We can talk about government solutions, and we got some solutions, and we're going to talk about some of those this morning to some of the problems we have. But y'all, our answer in this country to getting back to where we need to be and where this country started is Jesus Christ. And so we can pray. What we need to pray first and foremost is for revival in our country. And then we'll start to see, when we see hearts turn, we're going to start to see things happening in our government and us getting back to the foundations that our founding fathers built here in America. So thank you all for starting the meeting in prayer, and appreciate that. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to talk about some things we're going to do and get done as the next Attorney General of South Carolina. I've spoken to a lot of y'all in this room at the camp meeting, and I know some of the others maybe haven't heard me yet, but I'm from Greenwood, grew up there, went up to college over in Georgia, played sports in college, and that was kind of my focus way back then. But after I graduated, I had to figure out what I was going to do. So my college roommate was a sheriff's deputy over in Anderson County, worked for the Anderson County Sheriff's Department. I went home to Greenwood, and my brother and I started a small business. So I was a small businessman once upon a time too, before I went to law school. But the reason I went to law school was this. I had my buddy asked me to come on a ride along with him one night over in Anderson. So I went on this ride along. He worked the late shift. So we were riding around, responding to domestic violence calls and all kinds of craziness in the middle of the night over in Anderson. And one of the things he said that struck me, Mike told me, he said, David, one of the things that's the worst part about being a law enforcement officer is we go out here and bust our tails. We're risking our lives every night. And we see our cases go up to the courtroom and just the ball gets dropped. There's no tough approach to crime. They don't talk to us. They don't ask us who are the ones that we really need to get after. And it's frustrating. You know, they'll find out weeks later that a case has been dismissed without even a call from the solicitor's office. And so that struck me, and I thought, well, why can't I be that guy? I can go to law school. I can start going to court and fighting for these guys and making sure we get justice and make sure we keep our families safe. And so that's what motivated me in the first place to go to law school. And I went to law school down at Carolina. Vanessa and I moved to Columbia back 25 years ago. Now, we didn't have a child when we moved there, and then we had 4 kids there. Annie, my youngest, is here with us today. Our 2 oldest ones are adults now, so it was a long time ago. But we moved there because we serve and make the state better. That's why I went to law school. People are suing people. I went there because I wanted to serve the community and make the state better. So I went there, and as Lord started opening up doors, ended up getting a religious liberty cases with Bob Cook, who's a guy that's still there. There was a case we worked on that stands out in my mind. There was a Wiccan priestess over in Great Falls, South Carolina, sued the town because they were opening up their town council meetings praying in Jesus' name. You imagine, sue the town because they, the horror of them praying and starting their meetings and calling on the name of Jesus. So I was able to work on that case. That was when I was in law school. That was a great case where we defended the town. And First Amendment case. Obviously, all the libs out there want to say, well, you can't establish religion, separation of church and state, those words aren't even in the First Amendment, by the way. It talks about establishment, but it's, our founding fathers had in mind not setting up a specific denomination to be the state religion. It had nothing to do with people freely exercising, which those words are in the First Amendment, their faith in Christ. So anyway, that was a fun case to work on. But as I got into passing the bar exam and becoming an attorney, my passion was fighting crime. And so my first job there at that office was in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. We had just started that unit. There was a new law passed so we could keep kids safe online. And I'm not even going to go into the detail of the horrible stuff that I had to, see in that unit. But I will say the first 2 cases we ever successfully tried to a jury in our state under that new unit, we had a new law passed where law enforcement was working undercover in these chat rooms. And these guys would come out of the woodwork trying to meet up with young girls, and they'd show up, and of course there'd be a guy with a badge and a gun instead. Surprise, surprise. So we prosecuted those cases, and also some of the horrible images and videos that are traded online now of child abuse, child sex abuse, horrific stuff. I will say this: y'all pray for the people that are work in those units. And if I'm elected your next attorney general, we are going to put a tremendous amount of resources, more than we have now, in the ICAC unit, because there is no more important job in our state than protecting our kids, period. We can't do that, then we have failed. And so we're going to really put resources in that unit. As the first prosecutor of that unit over 20 years ago, that is a passion of mine. Worked in Lexington for about 4 years at the solicitor's office. I really learned about being a criminal prosecutor there. Had every kind of case you could think of. I tried murders, I tried rapes, I tried drug trafficking, public corruption cases, had a few of those. We had all kinds of stuff, property crimes, felony DUIs. I really got an experience there. I tried 37 cases to a jury verdict in about 3.5 years. We really had a lot of success. Thankfully, our juries in Lexington were pretty law and order conservative leaning. Not every county in South Carolina is like that, but that was a good place to try cases and fight crime. I went back to the AG's office in 2010, worked there for a little while as one of the supervisors for the statewide grand jury. And why do you ask, is that important? The main two types of cases we prosecuted in the statewide grand jury were public corruption cases, and we had a bunch of these high-level drug trafficking cases. In fact, I had a drug cartel that was running black tar heroin through Myrtle Beach from Mexico and distributing it all over the Southeast. And we were able to have a partnership with this local, state, and federal narcotics guys, and we took down that ring. It was a case called Black Poppy. We had about 25 defendants, including the son of a major cartel leader in Mexico. And so we had that was a great experience, y'all. And I tell you, I thought I'd be in that job for a while. It's a job I loved. I was supervising lawyers in that unit. The reason why I'm the 8th Circuit Solicitor today, though, is I had two sheriffs, the sheriff of Greenwood, the sheriff of Abbeville at the time, and the police chief in Greenwood. All three of these guys are now retired, but they're great law enforcement men that are still around today, and they're all supporting me in this campaign consequently. But they asked me to come to Greenwood because in the 8th Circuit, Greenwood, Lawrence, Newberry, Abbeville, because they were demoralized. We had a solicitor at the time that was not trying cases. He wasn't talking to his law enforcement agencies, and those guys were getting frustrated. It was the same thing I heard from my buddy Mike before I went to law school. It was this we're getting demoralized. We're having officers and young deputies leave the profession because they're getting paid, jack squat over here. The salaries are horrible for these officers, which we need to work on in this state. And then they're risking their lives and they're not getting good service in the courtroom. So I ran for 8th Circuit Solicitor. We left the AG's office. I couldn't stay there and run. So I had to move home, and we prayed about it. I thought it was a crazy notion, huge risk for us because I was in a very good job in Columbia, but we took the leap of faith because God was calling us to do it. And so we moved home. Vanessa grew up in Lawrence County. That's another one of our counties in the 8th Circuit. Moved home, ran for solicitor, and we won that race in a landslide against an incumbent solicitor, which I know how difficult that is now. Thankfully, it's tough to run against these guys. But that time, they were so frustrated with what they were getting in that circuit. And law enforcement said we need a change. That was 14 years ago, y'all. I am proud to say we have changed the culture in the 8th Circuit. I don't have my law enforcement guys running around asking for other people to run for solicitor because we're fighting crime right alongside them, and they have confidence in us. So I love what I've been able to do the last 14 years. And a lot of times I ask myself, now, why do I want to leave the circuit solicitor role and become the next attorney general? And that's a good question to ask. Why do I want to be AG? I want to be attorney general, y'all, because this state needs strong leadership. We could go two different directions right now in this state. We have the fastest growing state in America. Last year, the stats showed that per capita, South Carolina was growing faster than anywhere else in America. And we will lose the values that make this state special if we have the wrong people in our governor's seat, if we have the wrong person in our attorney general's seat. That is an extremely important office. In fact, I would argue that the AG seat has more effect on policy and the quality of life of the people of our state than even the governor. Because the governor in our state really, the legislature has so much power, and we need to work on that too, y'all. It's really outweighed with the power. We're going to talk about judicial reform in a little bit and why that matters. But the AG has a lot to do with the way we fight crime in this state. That's the main job, is to make sure we're keeping our people safe, to make sure we have a government that has integrity and we're holding them accountable, and to make sure that we're fighting for conservative principles in the court, in the civil court, and in public policy. Look, every time the legislature passes a good bill like the heartbeat bill, thank God Roe v. Wade was overturned. Praise the Lord for that. And when we get bills passed like the heartbeat bill that protect life, and they're sued by these radical leftist abortionist doctors, who do you think has to defend that law in court? The attorney general. And right now, I'm even a named defendant as a circuit solicitor in one of these suits because these abortionists are basically suing to not have the heartbeat bill enforced. And so all the governor, the AG, all the solicitors were named in a lawsuit. So we're fighting that battle as we speak in court. But that's the kind of fortitude you need in your AG. You need somebody who's pro-life. Y'all, and Vanessa and I, we've been pro-life, not just in a political setting. We've been working in crisis pregnancy centers, fighting for life our whole marriage, and we've given time and resources. So when I talk about the life issue, to us, it's personal. It's not just a political stance. It's how we live and how we've raised our family. And so that issue is important. What about election integrity? Y'all care about that issue? The worst thing we can do is go backwards in South Carolina on that. We need to make our elections more secure. And so I'll tell you, 2011, our state, thankfully, was one of the early states to pass a voter ID law 15 years ago. And who do you think attacked that statute? They said it was unconstitutional. It's disenfranchising voters. Are you kidding me? Why would you be against voter ID? Only reason you'd be against somebody proving who they are when they come to the polls is so you can cheat. That's the only reason you would be against it. So thankfully in South Carolina, the AG's office obviously had to defend our voter ID law. It went all the way up, y'all, to the DC Court of Appeals, and our voter ID law was upheld. And thankfully, we've had voter ID in South Carolina for the last 15 years. Now, the SAVE Act is still on the Senate's desk right now. The president has demanded, President Trump said, I don't want y'all to send me another bill till you pass the SAVE Act. And it is critical, y'all, for these midterms. We need that bill passed. So we need to get on the horn with every senator. We need to put as much pressure as we can on the U.S. Senate to pass that bill so the president can sign it into law. But here's what's going to happen when that bill is signed into law by the president. Every left-wing nut job organization out there is going to come after it. They're going to sue and say that it's unconstitutional. So who do you think defends the heartbeat bill? The voter ID bill and the SAVE Act when it gets challenged? It's going to be the AGs all across the country, particularly Republican AGs. They're going to have to weigh in on that and go to war in court to make sure that SAVE Act is upheld constitutionally. I'm ready to do that on day one as your AG, y'all, because I believe in voter ID. I believe in us having safe and secure elections. Parental rights, y'all, we need the parental rights bill passed as soon as possible. I had a meeting in the state Senate recently, and we talked to some of the senators and said this has got to be a priority next year. The House passed it unanimously. It blew through the House of Representatives, but we need parents. We had right here in Spartanburg County a situation, and I know y'all saw this last year, where you had parents of a child that wanted to transition and be transsexual, that basically the teacher of one of the schools here, right here in Spartanburg County, was blocking the parents from even knowing about it. And I know y'all saw this made the news last year. We need to make sure we have a parental rights bill so we can hold the school districts accountable when they do these sorts of things and the teacher was allowing the child to change, clothes to transgender clothes when they got to school. And this went on for at least over a year, it's my understanding. So the Attorney General is going to play a major role, y'all, in fighting for parental rights, because if that parental rights bill passes, there are provisions in it that has the Attorney General be the clearinghouse for complaints coming in from parents when their rights are being trampled on. I'm ready to fight for our parents in the courtroom as your next Attorney General. Your Second Amendment rights, y'all, I'm not even going to spend much time on this because it's a no-brainer. We defend the Second Amendment and the right of good citizens to bear arms, y'all. The only thing stopping a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And my law enforcement partners will even tell you this. It takes some time sometimes if there's an emergency situation, an active shooter, for them to get there. The call may come in and it takes them a couple minutes to respond. You need good people with guns in those situations to stop the bad guy. And I'm never going to allow our cities, counties, state government, and sometimes this happens, y'all. City of Columbia a few years ago, liberals on the city council there almost passed an ordinance that would have been blatantly unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. And the AG's office had to send a letter and stop it. And so I will be fighting for your Second Amendment rights day in and day out. That is not something you're going to have to worry about. It's with Stumbo as your next AG. I could talk about a lot of issues. I'm going to end on this, and I'll open it up for some questions. Judicial reform, y'all. We have to change the way we elect judges in this state. There's a group of us solicitors that got together several years ago, including one of my former opponents in this race, Pasco and Rick Hubbard in Lexington, Kevin Brackett over in York. We wrote an op-ed piece back in 2023 and demanded judicial reform. And so we've been calling for this for several years now. The bottom line is the legislature dominates the judicial branch in our state, and that cannot continue to happen. You have lawyers in the legislature that have the oldest cases on my docket in the 8th Circuit. That shouldn't happen. The reason is they don't have to come to court. The judges have even told me that they're worried when they make a lawyer legislator come to court or hold them into account that they got to go back in front of that same judge on their reelection. That's a problem, y'all. We got to stop that. And so we're one of two states in America that elects our judges that way. I think we need to scrap the Judicial Merit Screening Commission completely. It was put into the Constitution in the 1990s. So this is not an old constitutional provision. It was put in the 90s for a good purpose to try to screen judges and make sure we had good candidates. But what it ended up being was a way for the legislature to kind of rig the judicial elections, because they wouldn't have to screen out everybody. They could screen out the guy they wanted and 2 weak candidates because they only had to put 3 out. That's a problem. And so look, we need to, tomorrow, if we had a constitutional amendment on the ballot this year, I promise you the people of South Carolina would vote overwhelmingly in favor of just getting rid of the Judicial Merit Screening Commission. I believe we need to go to the federal model. And there's not a lot good that comes out of D.C., y'all. But the way we've appointed judges on the federal level and Supreme Court justices over the centuries has worked. And it's what y'all are used to. Elections have consequences. So our gubernatorial elections, when we vote for a governor, one of the big issues should be what kind of judges would they appoint if they had the power to do it like the president does on the federal level. The legislature should play a role in this, which is a quality control role. Just like in the federal system, you have a judge nominated by the president. The Senate judiciary has fully transparent hearings. Everybody gets to see them. And then they have a vote at the end of it. And the Senate and our legislature can do the same thing. If it's a bad candidate that the governor puts forward, the legislature can say, nope, send us another one. We need to go to that model here. And I'm going to be using the bully pulpit of the AG's office to advocate for judicial reform, y'all. We got to have it in the state. I think I'm running out of time. So what I'm going to do is open it up for a few questions. Frank, how much time do I have for questions?
We've got 15 minutes more. We just wanted to take a Q&A. So
okay, good. Absolutely.
And since we're live streaming, if you could just come up to the microphone to ask the questions.
For over 20 years, there's a Muslim compound outside of Sumter. Residents have been complaining about automatic weapons fire, and the police have been told they need to stand down. This is over 20 years. We don't need a Muslim compound in South Carolina. That's a training camp.
Who's telling them to stand down? I'd like to know that.
That's a good question.
The local police to stand down.
You'd have to ask the police that.
Okay. Yeah, so I plan to, because that's a problem. Look, you got these Muslim compounds where they're trying to implement Sharia law they're almost like they're an entity in a country of themselves. The bottom line is if they're in our country, y'all, they're going to obey our laws and our Constitution. And so if we get reports and information that we can get search warrants to go onto these properties, if there's reports of women being abused, of children being abused, which is, perfectly legal under Sharia law to sexually abused kids, by the way. I don't know if y'all knew that. So we're going to make sure that if that's going on, and this is in our country, they're obeying our laws. We don't recognize Sharia law here. If they're abusing kids, we're going to go in and investigate them. We're going to prosecute them, period.
Americans lose about $21 billion a year due to cybercrime. South Carolina lost about $264 million last year per numbers that I've read. Now that's up about $100 million over the past year. 40% of that is attributed to people who are age 60 and older. What's your thinking on this concerning how we can strengthen our laws? We are a growing state, but we should not be increasing at that rate. Please help us.
Yes, sir. And fraud perpetrated on our retirees and our elderly population is something that greatly concerns me. And a lot of this stuff's coming from out of state and out of the country. So that's what makes it so difficult for law enforcement to walk it back to who's doing it. I've had the sheriff down in McCormick County is Chad Cox. He's a good friend of mine. Down Savannah Lakes is one of our big retirement communities anywhere in South Carolina, right in McCormick County, down the road from where I live. And so Sheriff Cox asked me to come down one day. We had a meeting at the community center. There were probably 150 people there, mostly retirees, people that lived at Savannah Lakes. And that was the topic. It was trying to educate the folks that were there so they could also tell people that they know that anytime you get a call or something on the internet, an email or something that looks too good to be true, it is. It's a fraud. It's a scam 100% of the time. And one of the things these scammers do now is they'll play on the fears of folks because they're trusting. They don't think somebody would call them and, say, hey, I'm a law enforcement officer that has a warrant for your arrest. Or this is one they've used. We have your grandson, they'll do a Facebook internet search and see that somebody has grandchildren. And they'll say, hey, well, your grandson's here in the detention center. You need to wire some money to bond them out. Give us your bank information. So, and this stuff's really happening, y'all. And people will give them their bank account and they'll just get cleaned out. And it's somebody, not a law enforcement agency, it's somebody in Bangladesh that's, spoofed a number and it looks like a number that's coming from here. That's a problem. So one of the things we have to do is educate folks to call. And we encourage them to do that. Say, look, you get a call telling you that you're about to get arrested for something and give money, call the sheriff's department immediately. Hang up, call the sheriff's department and say, I just got this call. Is this y'all or is this legitimate? Because the sheriff's department's going to tell them, no, it's a scam. If the next time they call back, hang up. And so that will cut a lot of that stuff off that I see happening. But sometimes there's stuff that's going on online that you're getting your bank information ripped. So educating people again on how to have secure tools on their internet, on their computer. Go talk to the IT people that you know in your life. Or, my brother, for example, is an IT guy. He is brilliant. He talks over my head all the time about IT stuff and computers and networks. But he's my go-to guy. I say, look, do I have the right security on my system here? And then for governments too. I mean, a couple of years ago, Spartanburg got hit. The county got hit here, y'all. I mean, and the information got compromised. I mean, so it can happen. So you have to have the most up-to-date security on the computers. But when we do find, I guess the question is, how can I help as AG? One, educate the public. But the big thing is if we can find out who did it, we're going to, even if they're out of state, we're going to go after them. We'll extradite them, bring them back here and prosecute them. It's just very difficult sometimes to trace that back.
Mr. Stumbo,
Yes, sir.
you talked about secure elections, which is very critical.
Right.
According to the South Carolina Constitution, as I read it, your vote is in private, which it is, but that the votes are counted in public, which they are not with the machines.
Right.
Will you advocate to get rid of these machines and investigate the security issues with these machines?
Yes, I think that's the cast vote records issue, I think is a big deal. I know there was an AG opinion a few years ago that I would disagree with, but it was one that basically said that those are not able to be analyzed publicly. And I think that's probably a bad idea. We need to have those to be open to public scrutiny to make sure there's integrity with them. The one thing I will say on the machines versus paper ballot issue, certainly I think in a perfect world, I'd love to see paper ballots. I think would be the best way to do it. I think, yes, but I think one of the things we're going to have to do is recruit a lot of manpower to make sure we can do that right. One thing that is, I will just give a kind of a flip side to this too. One thing that is possible though, even if you have paper ballots, if you have evil people wanting to do bad things, say you have overwhelmingly Democrat precincts that wanted to cheat on paper ballots, they could probably do it easier on paper ballots than if there was a digital footprint with the machines. So that is something to think about. I could, as a prosecutor, this is what I'm thinking. If somebody, physically destroys ballots that are paper, that there's no electronic footprint on, that I can go back and see the cheating, it's a lot harder to prove. If somebody's cheating a machine that's connected to a network, it's a little bit easier to prove the fraud. So that is another little, just something to think about with that. I'm not saying that we need to continue to do what we're doing. I have heard presentations on doing paper ballots. I think that if we can recruit enough people to pull that off on election day, because I think it would require a lot more people than we have working the polls right now, then I'd be in favor of it. So I think we need to make sure we're doing it the right way. I guess the bottom line. But I would say this, we still have to have people watching. I mean, if you have these Democrat precincts out there that have paper ballots and all they have to do is go put them in the shredder, I could never prove that they cheated. If I went and picked up a machine and the machine had digital evidence that they cheated, then I got them. So does that make sense? So I'm looking at it somewhat from an evidentiary and a prosecution perspective too. So I think we just need to be, whatever we need to do to make our elections the most secure, I'm all for. That's probably the best way I'm going to answer that. So, yeah.
Yes, this is a national problem, which is becoming a South Carolina problem.
Yes, sir.
And it deals with foreign ownership of agricultural area, plus critical places like military bases and secure locations. I know it's not necessarily passing the law, it's how would you enforce that, knowing that some of these people are actually going to be American citizens.
Right. Well, I think we need to do what Arkansas has already done in several other states, and we need to ban China from buying up our farmland, period. We need to pass that statute as soon as possible. So I'm sure, we have legislators in the room, Rob and others. I mean, that is something that needs to be a priority. And I've heard our Ag Commission candidates talk about that. I know Cody's talked about it a lot about, look, we need to secure our farmland because farm security and food security is national security. Why do you think the Chinese are buying up all this land around farms? And they're putting all their bait shops right by our military installations. Y'all know that, right? That's a problem, y'all, because they're basically wanting to have an addicted American military, and they're targeting our soldiers. And so there's some things we really need to start looking at with the Chinese and how underhanded they are and the things they're doing. Because look, they do not have our best interest at heart. I can promise you that. I would love to see that statute passed and a law passed next year that bans the Chinese from buying our land in South Carolina. Arkansas has already done it, by the way.
David, my name's Larry Barnett from York County.
Yes, sir.
I'm a member of the state Republican Party. We have reorganization every 2 years during which both counties and the state go through a convention process and elect leaders. Those processes are not being done in an honest and upfront manner. There's cheating going on in both the county and the state level. Our current AG have refused to take any responsibility or do anything about that. Our civil rights are being violated. And I would like to know if you're going to stand with the people when we have our conventions next year.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to make sure that our parties are doing the right thing. I mean, and right now, and I'll tell you, y'all that have been involved with the Republican Party on the state level probably could educate me even more on what's going on in those meetings. Because quite frankly, y'all, I'll be honest with you, I've been in the 8th Circuit fighting crime for the past 14 years, and that's been my priority. I have not been super involved on the state level with, and I'm just being frank with you on the process and what's going on with reorg. But I would love to talk more and y'all could tell me what's going on. We need to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table that wants a seat at the table in the Republican Party. So, yes, sir.
Mr. Stumbo. I have a two-part question, if that's okay.
Okay.
First part question is, I want to know, what are your thoughts on what happened with COVID? What are your thoughts on mandates for masks, mandates for vaccines,
Very good,
mandates
yeah.
for staying in your house and not being able to go outside?
Yes.
That's
right.
my first question. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you brought that up because I think I rushed through my speech. I was trying to stay on task, and I think I left this part. I've talked about this a lot on the campaign trail. We never need to let what happened in 2020, 2021 happen again. We just don't. I told, and even as I had a little bit of a role as solicitor of the 8th Circuit, at least in my 4 counties, and I had conversations with my sheriffs, my police chiefs, and I told all of them, I said, y'all, we ain't arresting people for not wearing a mask, period. That ain't happening. So don't even think about it. Now, of course, my sheriffs and chiefs are pretty conservative in the 8th Circuit. So none of them, they were on board with that. But we didn't have that problem with a lot of bullying from the government in my circuit. Now, I know even parts of South Carolina, I think COVID, we moved on a lot quicker in South Carolina than New York and other places. So I'm thankful for that, but we probably let it linger on a little bit too long here of suppressing our citizens' rights. Look, we're seeing the ripple effect even to this day. Our businesses were shut down. We had people lose their jobs. We had soldiers in the United States military, y'all, that had to leave because they refused to take the vaccine. And now that we're seeing all the problems that are coming as a result, they made the right decision, but we lost good people in our military because they were forced to take the vaccine or leave. So as the next AG, I'm always going to stand on the side of families and individuals making decisions for their families on medical decisions like vaccines and other things, not the government. Government bureaucrats don't need to be making those calls.
So then, just as a quick second part of my question, if we were ever to face that again, and we had a governor who was on the side of leaning towards those mandates and doing those mandates again, would you as AG have would be able to stand against that and say, no, we're not going to push that to the governor? Right. Would you stand up to the governor?
Actually, the attorney general is the only one that can keep a governor in check in South Carolina. And thankfully, in our state, the AG is elected independently, right? The AG is not appointed by the governor like on the federal level. So we've actually had suits in years past. It's been a long time, but I remember there was a big lawsuit where Charlie Condon as AG was brought a case against Jim Hodges when he was the governor. And that was years and years ago. But yes, the short answer is yes. I would not, as AG, stand for unconstitutional mandates without being checked. So, yeah. Thanks, Becky.
We just want to thank Mr. Stumbo for being here. And we know this is short. This crowd would line up and ask you questions for the next hour.
And
so
I'd be glad to answer them, but I know y'all got a lot of other candidates.
All right. So thank you.
Yeah.
And there's somebody waiting to do an interview with you outside.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. I did not introduce a couple of people that were with us because I couldn't find Cody Simpson. I don't know how I missed him. I saw him coming in, but Cody Simpson, who is Agriculture Commissioner candidate, is with us today. And you will find your video on the YouTube channel, the County of Common Sense as well. Also, House Representative, newly nominated at about 10:15 last night, is Rob Harris, who I saw the picture of the Election Commission and they were weary, but they were smiling. So we have with us next the senator from, I don't know where Mr. Goldfinch is from. I know he's in the lobby, so you can escort him in. But I am excited that we've got this format. And if I have missed any other elected or nominated officials, then you'll have to snag me in the interim. What we're going to do is we'll do a little over half an hour with Senator Goldfinch, and we will take questions from him at the end of his remarks. And if you are standing in line, I think that went well. We will get you in front of the question camera. But now, Mr. Goldfinch, come on down. You're behind the standards for me, and I can't see you. So right up here. Now, only thing I didn't know is, are you actually from Columbia or you just work there?
No, absolutely not.
All right, it's yours.
Thank you very much. No, ma'am, I am originally from Orion, Georgetown County. We sort of see ourselves as one. Thank you very much. Can I take this off and just, I don't like podiums, y'all, I'm sorry. Yeah, I live in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. I have a wife of Renee. She's 20. We've been together for 20 years. As of about 3 weeks ago, we had our 20th anniversary. I've got 2 kids. I've got a little girl who's 12 and a little boy who's 10. Oh, you got a camera? I apologize.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Is that good right there?
Well, wherever you want to stand, he's going to focus on.
So don't move.
I don't know.
I'm sorry about that, Mr. Cameraman. You're doing a great job. Got a little girl who's 12. Her name's Hadley. A little boy who's 10. He just turned 10 a few days ago. So real proud of them. And they're missing their dad right now. So we're ready for this campaign to be over. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a veteran. I'm the only veteran in the race here. I'm a veteran. I'm a military prosecutor, a judge advocate general. I've prosecuted a lot of cases that threaten our national security and our men and women in uniform. Y'all may have heard of Boko Haram or ISIS or some of that group. We prosecuted those cases in North Africa and Southern Europe. So I've prosecuted cases at a real high level, and I know what I'm doing in the criminal justice realm, and that is a significant portion of what the Attorney General's office does. But one of the more important, even more important pieces of what the Attorney General's office does is what's called the Civil and the Administrative Division. This is a piece of what the Attorney General's office does that most people don't even know exists. This is the portion of the office that holds the federal government accountable. We were never supposed to have such a big centralized federal government, a powerful federal government. The states were where it was at and is where it is at now, where the power is supposed to reside. The Attorney General of South Carolina is the only person that is allowed to, that is destined to, that is duty bound to hold the federal government accountable on behalf of the state of South Carolina. Y'all, that is what my law practice does today. My law practice is what's called administrative and regulatory law. I hold the government accountable on behalf of the businesses and the citizens and the churches of South Carolina. I have done that from day one. I've also been a conservative lawmaker. I've been in the House, I've been in the Senate. I passed and helped draft bills like the bond reform bill, which ended this revolving door of bad guys getting arrested, getting put right back out on the street. I helped pass and draft the homicide by fentanyl bill, which ended the peddling of the poison. I hope it ends the peddling of the poison for good. But we shouldn't just be holding addicts accountable. We should be holding the guys that peddle the poison accountable, the guys that are literally killing our kids on the streets. That is a significant piece of progress for South Carolina. I was proud to be a part of drafting that and helping to pass that. We also put a school resource officer in every single school in South Carolina. That is a huge deal for South Carolina, y'all, a huge deal. We have never done that in the history of South Carolina. We've got to protect our most innocent, our most vulnerable, and those are our kids that are in schools, in our care, in public schools. I have also been a businessman. That's sort of how I self-identify, as a businessman. I don't identify as a politician or even as a lawyer. What I do, what I love to do, is open businesses. And I've opened multiple successful businesses right here in South Carolina. And y'all, I had to fight the federal government every single step of the way. My very first business was one of the toughest businesses to open, regulation-wise, and it was called a biotech firm. We did umbilical cord blood stem cell banking. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Umbilical cord blood stem cells are the blood that comes out of an umbilical cord when a baby's born. It's normally, the umbilical cord's normally cut off and tossed away in the trash, as you know. This is not the crazy, controversial embryonic stem cell stuff. Umbilical cord blood stem cells come right out of the umbilical cord, and they have great promise. And in fact, Donald Trump and RFK Jr. Right now, we're pushing to legalize those in all 50 states, along with peptides. We extracted those umbilical cord blood stem cells. We figured out a way to cryogenically freeze them permanently, indefinitely, and then to use those for future treatments for babies, God forbid they were to come down with an improved treatment like leukemia or lymphoma. And y'all, that company did so well. It did so well. But for the federal government, who was in my way every single step of the way. This was my first career, my first company that I opened right out of school. I'd gone to the Citadel. I got to see, I know there's other Citadel grads in here. I went to the Citadel, I graduated, I got my MBA, my very first job, thrown into the lion's den with the federal government. In 2006, I sold that company and I started the second company where we did umbilical cord blood stem cell research, and we started creating stem cell lines out of these umbilical cord blood stem cells and pushing those down cell lines and creating neurons and ogocytes and chondrocytes and all the funny things that are in the body and selling those to researchers all over the world. And y'all, that company did so well, but for the federal government, who was in my way every step of the way. They weren't there as a stepping stone. They were there as a stumbling block. They weren't there to build wealth. They were there to destroy wealth. And so you know what I did? I decided I needed a lawyer in my pocket 24/7, so I went to law school. Crazy thing to do. But now, that's what I had to do. I had to have a lawyer constantly just to live the American dream, just to be an entrepreneur. And that sickens me to my stomach to think about today. But that's exactly what I had to do, and that's what I did. I went to law school. When I graduated from law school, I'd already sold that second biotech company. I graduated from law school, and my first case was a guy that sat down in front of me and he said, Stephen, I'm a contractor, I'm a builder, I'm a real estate agent. Y'all know these guys. They live in your communities. They're just hustling, just trying to make a living. He said, Stephen, I'm building a house with a dock behind it in Merle's Inlet. DHEC came out to do an inspection of the dock, and they found a 50-year-old unpermitted bulkhead buried 3 feet in the mud. Just a bunch of old rotten wood. Had no bearing on anything. And he said, for 9 months, I've fought this problem with the government, and they're making me go bankrupt for some rotting wood that has no bearing on anything. And I looked at the guy, real simple problem, but a real complex problem for him. I looked at the guy sitting across the desk from me, and I was so mad because I was looking at a guy that was just like me just a few years ago, fighting the government for every scrap that they had threw underneath the table. It was disgusting, it was sickening, and I was just mad. And I committed at that point, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is what my law practice will be dedicated to. And that's what I do to this very day, ladies and gentlemen. I fight the government for a living. That's what administrative and regulatory law does. So when I tell you I'm well-rounded and qualified for this job, here's what that means. The Attorney General's office has 3 divisions. I've told you, the Criminal Justice Division. I've done that. I've prosecuted cases at the highest level, including those that threaten our national security. The Civil and the Administrative Division, the 2nd Division. I have done that at the highest of levels. I can tell you $13 billion worth of economic impact that I've put in South Carolina just from my law firm and fighting the government and the regulations and the policies and the rules that they push down on us. 13 billion with a B. And the third one, the 3rd Division of the Attorney General's office, the Opinions and the Legislative Division. It's super important, but very few people know it even exists. That's where the Attorney General and the legislature coordinate and talk on a regular basis about what laws are coming down the pipe, how to make them better, how to make them defensible, all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, I need you to think about the most controversial bills you've heard about, laws. Second Amendment rights, right? Constitutional carry, for instance. Pro-life laws. Dismemberment, for instance. Personhood, for instance. You name it, whatever the most pro-life, most Second Amendment, most tax implicated laws that we have. Y'all, the federal government in 2028, if we wind up with a Gavin Newsom or a Kamala Harris, God forbid, they're coming for it. They're coming for all of us. They're coming for South Carolina's values. They're coming for our conservatism. They're coming for our laws that we're passing, and they're coming hard. That is what I do every single day. I work with the Attorney General's office in my Senate capacity, making sure our laws are defensible all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I fight the government in my private capacity, adding billions of dollars back to South Carolina in economic development. And I've prosecuted cases at the highest levels. Those are the three things, ladies and gentlemen, that the Attorney General's office does. I've done them well. I have done them a lot. And I'd love to do them as your next Attorney General. And I'd love to finish with this story. I think he said I had 15 minutes, right? Okay. I'd love to finish with this story. A few years ago, I was deployed to North Africa, combat zone. I was injured. Thankfully, it was a non-combat injury. Y'all may remember the Houthis were firing rockets. Y'all remember this into the Red Sea a few years ago? I was deployed. I was 11 miles from Yemen where the Houthis were firing these rockets. I fell in a bunker. We were in and out of bunkers a lot. Fell in a bunker, hyperextended my shoulder. I tore my rotator, my pectoral, and my labrum right off my shoulder. A nasty injury. Yeah, I know. I see your face. That's how I felt about it too. My pectoral muscle rolled up like a fruit roll up in here. It was nasty, nasty, nasty. But it was non-emergent, right? I wasn't bleeding, wasn't shot or anything crazy like that. I wasn't bleeding out. So they coded it as non-emergent. Okay? And they put me on an airfield and said, Medevac's going to come get you any time now. I waited on that airfield for 7 days. Halfway between Mogadishu and Djibouti. So you can imagine what that place is like, right? Not a great place. 130 degrees. My boots melted. They're not supposed to do that. I had a lot of time while I was sitting there to think about what makes South Carolina great. And then when I saw the C-17 circle, it landed, 2 pilots and a nurse got out. And they walked over to me and they started an IV. I was extremely dehydrated. They started an IV. And I got to talking to the pilot, and he said he was from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And y'all, the last thing I remember about that experience in North Africa was when I got put on the back of the plane, the tail fin of that plane had the Palmetto flag painted on it. They had flown from Joint Base Charleston to pick me up. Y'all, South Carolina is an amazing place to live and work and raise a family. This is an amazing place, and I owe it a tremendous debt of gratitude. Y'all, service is in my DNA, and my service is not over. My debt is not paid. That's why I want to do this job, because I owe this place and the people in it a debt of gratitude. And I'd be honored to have your support in the runoff, June 23rd. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'd love to take your questions, please. I'm going to get some order here real fast.
Thanks for running, Mr. Goldfinch. And one thing that really got my attention with what you were saying, and none of the other candidates were bringing it up, was illegal immigration.
Oh, yeah.
Will you advocate for harsher penalties for illegals who hurt South Carolinians? And also, I know you have a business background, but will you actively go and prosecute businesses that employ illegals?
Thank you. I think it's a good question. As all of you that are here are likely educated. You wouldn't be here if you weren't on policy and politics in South Carolina. So you know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The General Assembly and Congress, ultimately it's Congress, is responsible for immigration law in South Carolina. The Attorney General is responsible for enforcing the law. Right now, illegal immigration, whether you're a violent criminal or not, whether you've committed a heinous crime like a murder, or whether or not you're just here illegally, is a crime. It is the Attorney General's office to prosecute those crimes. So the answer to your question is absolutely. Yes, I will. We have an illegal immigration task force that I helped stand up maybe 5 or 6 years ago at the current Attorney General's office. Proud of that work, by the way. We've done great work there, but we need to double down on that. This is a hidden cost on South Carolina in the same way that regulations and policies, bad policies from the federal government, are a hidden cost on South Carolina, right? They push these policies down on us. The illegal immigrants flood into our state. This is simple economics, y'all. What happens, right? Rent goes up. Prices go up. Everything goes up. Forget the fact that they're here illegally and committing a crime. Everything goes up. This is a hidden cost on us, including the enforcement. The same way with rules and regulations and policies that are burdensome that come from the federal government. What happens? The companies have to comply with those burdensome regulations and policies and rules. What happens? The companies then pass along those costs to the consumer. This is simple economics, y'all. I have saved the state $13 billion in economic impact from fighting an oppressive federal government. And I can tell you about all those examples if you'd like, okay? I can do this at a tremendous level at the Attorney General's office. I would be a highly effective Attorney General on day one. It's absolutely, thank you so much for your question.
Hi, Mr. Goldfinch.
Hi.
I have a two-part question I asked Mr. Stumbo. I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
My first question is I'd like to know what your thoughts are on mandating for medical masks for vaccines and for locking us in our homes and not being able to go outside with what happened and what we went through with COVID.
Thank you very much for your question. I'll give you a good example of that. When we got into COVID, one of the first things that the governor did was close beaches and boat landings. Y'all may not remember this, but you can look back and you can track it. Check my facts. I changed that within 3 days. Check my facts. I got on the phone with the governor and explained, Governor, you don't have young kids right now. Let me explain to you what the parents of this state are going through with no school, with no child care. Dads like me are responsible for getting our kids out of our wives' hair. Could be indefinitely. We have no idea for how long, right? Think about how irresponsible it is for us to close the places where we actually could have social distanced. I was taking my kids fishing or to the beach 5 days a week just to get them out of the house, get them out of my wife's hair, right? So that she could stay sane. And I mean, we laugh about that, but y'all, that was a real thing back then, right? Those were my outlets. I got on the phone with Henry McMaster on day one. By day 3, could have been day 4, he had reversed his executive order and reopened beaches. I had written letters. I had fussed. I had fought. And after a meeting with him, masked, ridiculous meeting with him, and multiple phone calls and multiple letters, within 4 days, he opened beaches and boat landings again. The answer to your question is, would I enforce mask mandates if they came again?
That's my second part is,
All right.
is if the
I knew it was
governor,
coming.
if the governor would, if that ever happened with us again with another pandemic, after you should wear a mask, would you be standing up to the governor?
I think that would be in,
And I think
I think that would be in violation of the law, and me and the governor would have a real problem in court. So absolutely, I'm with you 100%. We do not need vaccine mandates. Look, I support people that vaccinate their children. That's their right. But that's the thing about parental rights, right? You have the right to do those things for your kids. You have the right not to do those things for your kids. And it is ridiculous that we even have to ask the government, by the way, it's ridiculous we even have to ask the government for a waiver. We shouldn't have to ask the government for a waiver whether or not we want to vaccinate our kids. That is up to you. That is your child. And that is the most frustrating thing for me. Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
We live in the bluest state in the entire South. Our representatives, and especially our Senate, are notoriously left-wing. I was at the persecution of Curtis Loftus. A bunch of us were. I'm asking, will you apologize for that horrible, despicable tragedy that happened? Because that was wrong. We were all there. We witnessed it. It was just like a trial in China or Iran. So I'm asking for an apology.
Listen, I appreciate that you like Curtis Loftus. I like Curtis Loftus. I call Curtis Loftus a friend. Okay, but if I'm appointed as special prosecutor, no matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, I'm following the evidence. This wasn't a Stephen Goldfinch prosecution. This was a Senate prosecution, an impeachment. Not a criminal impeachment. I've never in my life have I accused Curtis Loftus of committing a crime. Never in my life will I unless SLED or the FBI presents me with the evidence. Okay? But the Senate of South Carolina declared that Curtis Loftus had made some mistakes, some financial mistakes. Like that or not, that wasn't Stephen Goldfinch. That was 38 senators on the Senate floor. So whether or not he's committed a crime, I hope he hasn't. I don't think he has. I haven't seen evidence of that. But I'm going to follow the evidence as the next Attorney General. I am going to be bipartisan, nonpartisan. I'm going to do whatever I'm supposed to do as a prosecutor because that's what prosecutors are supposed to do, right? I have no animus towards Curtis or anybody else, but I will follow the law and I will follow the evidence, and I am duty bound to do that. If you're willing to say, no, I'll never pursue Curtis or anybody else because I like that person, y'all, we're not in America anymore. That's the wrong place for us to be. I will follow the evidence. And if Curtis is exonerated, and God, I hope he is, because I like him a lot. I called him a good friend before this. I still think he's a friend. I hope we can rekindle that relationship later. I hope he's exonerated. But I will follow the evidence. That's the answer to your question.
Hi, I'm Melissa from Pickens. I'm reading one of your posts. It says, as the next Attorney General, that you will open a public corruption unit to deal with corruption at all levels of government. Bureaucrats will no longer ruin people's lives because that's the way we've always done it. Elected officials will no longer live off tax dollars intended for your roads and schools. We'll start in Orangeburg and work our way around. First question, why Orangeburg? Because obviously Pasco is from Orangeburg. So when you talk about not having, what concerns me in the SCGOP, we have problems with people that are retaliating and doing it for their purposes.
Sure. No.
Are you going to be one of those?
It has nothing to do with Pasco. It has everything to do with Gilda Hunter. Yeah, I'm sorry. You couldn't hear her question. Is that what you said? Yeah, she said, I have a post that says, I'm going to open a public corruption unit on day one at the Attorney General's office, and that we're no longer going to sit back and allow or sit back and tolerate public officials that live off of the tax dollars in South Carolina. We're not going to allow bureaucrats to continue to ruin people's lives and businesses because that's the way they've always done it, which, by the way, that's what they will always tell you. I'm sorry, I'll get off on a diatribe and then I'm going to answer your question, I promise you. I always ask a bureaucrat when I put them on the stand or I depose a bureaucrat, I always ask them the same question. This is the question. What is it that gave you the authority to ruin my client's life? And it's usually a church or a business or just a citizen of South Carolina. What is it that gave you the authority as a bureaucrat, as an agency, to ruin this person's life? And the answer almost always is this. That's the way we've always done it. Y'all, that's the wrong answer. The only right answer is the law. I will not tolerate that as the next Attorney General. All right, so to answer your question, why Orangeburg? The answer is Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter. I found in the budget this year that Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter had been sending herself via a proviso hundreds of thousands of dollars into Orangeburg, into what's called a diversion program for youth, okay? She runs a nonprofit for a diversion program for youth kids to get them out of the criminal justice system in Orangeburg. Sounds great. I would love for that to happen. I'm not sure that I like that the state budget is paying her nonprofit to do that, but the mission is great. The only problem, that service doesn't exist in Orangeburg. It's not real. The DJJ director told us it's not real. Y'all, that is unacceptable conduct on behalf of a legislator. That is stealing. That is corrupt. She's in Orangeburg. She's the reason I'm going to start in Orangeburg. And we're going to work our way across this state, rooting that out.
I think you really need to root it out in Columbia because it's a whole bunch of it. And we could start at SCGOP.
I don't have any problem rooting it out in Columbia either. Absolutely not. Thank you for your question.
Yes, sir. My name's Earl Miller. I'm from here in Spartanburg. And I'm so glad you brought up the Second Amendment in your speech.
Yes.
Our current Attorney General, Alan Wilson, joins many briefs with other Attorney Generals across the United States supporting briefs before the United States Supreme Court in favor of the Second Amendment. You say you are going to support the Second Amendment. If we elect you Attorney General, are you going to continue the same thing as our current Attorney General? And if so, why should we trust you to do so when in 2018 you held up constitutional carry while you were chairman of the Judiciary Committee?
All right. Thank you for your question. I've never been chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and I've never held up constitutional carry. I voted for constitutional carry. In fact, I voted for the last constitutional carry. I voted for the constitutional carry before that, and those are all called different things. But I'm afraid your facts are just wrong. I absolutely supported constitutional carry. I'm a big Second Amendment advocate. In fact, I've got 100% rating by the NRA. So y'all can divine what you want to out of that, okay? I actually own 2 gun ranges in Horry and Georgetown County. I own more, and I hate to even say this out loud because I don't like to brag about it because I've become a target. I own more Class 3 weapons than anybody in the second half of the state.
Well,
I am a big Second Amendment advocate.
Then if
and
that's
absolutely.
true, my information may be wrong.
Yeah.
But I do know in 2024 you did vote for the constitutional
I did.
carry bill.
I did, yes, sir. And I appreciate your question to straighten that up. Thank you very much for that. Big Second Amendment. I will absolutely support other Republican attorney generals and their fights for the Second Amendment. In fact, I've got a great group of Republican attorneys. I've been going to the Republican Attorney Generals Association. I got a great group of Republican attorney generals that I've been communicating with on all of these issues right now, including China, y'all. We didn't have a chance to talk about China. China's a big, big deal. The Stephen Goldfinch administration for Attorney General, we're going to be tackling China, and I know how to do that. So thank you for your question. Are we out of time? Thank y'all so much. I'd be honored to have your vote on June 23rd.
And we thank you so much. Did I get an answer? Are you from Columbia?
No, ma'am.
Or
No, ma'am. No, I'm not from Columbia. Yeah, I was born in Conway, South Carolina. Yeah, I was born in Conway. I went to Conway schools. My parents lived in Georgetown County and Murrells Inlet. And I moved to Charleston to go to the Citadel. I got my MBA from the Charleston. I got my from the Citadel. I got my law degree from Charleston, and then I moved back to Murrells Inlet. I've been here my entire life, other than the Army, where the Army took me.
well, it's a good thing you're not from Columbia. Just saying. We've got a Citadel flag out there welcoming you because you have a friend from the Citadel here. All right. Well, it's nice to have had you in the Upstate.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I want to make sure I have acknowledged everybody here. I know I'm supposed to stay right here. We're having a hard time. This is like herding cats. We have a space there for the questioner, and we'd like our next guest to stay behind the podium so that they're in front. All right, we've got a little bit of a break now, and you're welcome to get up and stretch because we're going long today. Okay, Cody, you can come. All right, I apologize for not having introduced Cody when I did the first introductions, and I want to make sure I haven't missed anybody else. I do know that Secretary of Treasury Curtis Loftus was in our midst, and I failed to introduce him, and I don't see him now. But Cody, you can have the mic.
Let me see if this one works.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all very much. Glad to be here. I know we have a lot of our camp meetings, camp members here. Oh, it expands. There we go. Oh, country boy here. There we go. Well, thank y'all very much again for being here. I see a lot of my friends that have been a part of the Republican Party for a long time. I was just talking to one of the young ladies earlier, and I was telling her, because it was one of her first meetings, and I asked her how old she was. She said, I was 16. She's 16. I said, wow, Well, I was 16 when I went to my first Republican Party meeting. And I tell you, that was a few years ago, but I think it's very important that we have organizations like this to keep everyone accountable and transparent. You all are on the front lines of understanding what's happening out in our communities. You all have been a part of understanding, again, bringing the conservative values back. I know we're all a part of the Republican Party, but I think first we're conservatives, and that's very important to me on my farm. Because sometimes, as y'all mentioned earlier, maybe the state or national, that sometimes, and maybe at the local, sometimes gets it wrong in the guise of a label. But if you always look at understanding that you're a conservative and understanding those principles, the limited government of Thomas Jefferson, I think is very important. And speaking of Thomas Jefferson, he was a farmer himself, as well as President George Washington, our first president there. And I think it's very important as we are getting through this election cycle, that we also understand that we have the celebration, the 250th anniversary of this country's founding and our independence. And I remind people, from not too far from here is a battlefield there. And I think it's important that we understand that it's the same farmers that left their farms, put down their plows, they put down their rakes, and they went to work to fight for a new America. And it is those same farmers, again, who came back. Some unfortunately didn't, and they picked back up and they got to work, fighting and feeding America. And so Battle of Cowpens is not too far from here, that just had their anniversary with their celebration. But I do think it's important that we tell our children the importance of our heritage. Agriculture has been a part of our fabric ever since we were founded. It is the same farmers, as I mentioned earlier. I'm from the PD. I'm a fifth-generation farmer, and I'm very fortunate to have labored in the trenches and worked long hours. That's why people say, well, how did you get up the next day after the election? I said, with farmers, we never sleep. We're always working. So it is the same farmers, as I mentioned, from the PD area, where the great legend, Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, who I'm a proud graduate, undergraduate there, and also a graduate. I even surprised myself sometimes that I got my graduate degree too. So, but we're happy again to have the namesake of Francis Marion, because he was a leader, and he is one of the leaders who actually fought for and what we're celebrating this year with our freedoms, and we remind people of that. But the farmers are the same ones that we have gone back now and looked at the diaries of a farm that's now with the same family owners from their 11th generation, still in operation over in Hartsville area in the PD. And there are diaries now that show that they were feeding Marion's troops while he had his hideout, which was nearby Snows Island, as y'all know, in the history. But it was the same farmers that they were giving them supplies and the food that they were growing. And so I think it's very important, again, that we recognize the importance of agriculture. I think it's also very important that you all know right now in South Carolina, our farmers are in a dire situation. Farmers are dealing with the high input cost caused by these big corporations, the chemical and seed companies, that are really just taking over and unfortunately shuttering a lot of our farms because we cannot afford to even grow the food that we're eating. It's becoming more and more consolidated. You look at that even with the meat packing, the meat processing. Not too far from here, obviously across the border, is Smithfield Farms. Well, Smithfield Farms is now owned by the Chinese communists, and they just bought Nathan brand hot dogs. People, especially with the national hot dog competition, everybody knows Nathan's, and everybody, oh, that's so good. I said, no, it's not good. Not Smithfield. Do you know who owns Smithfield? And the average person does not know that. Well, we also are seeing that even in our grocery stores, in our processing, in our manufacturing. Everything revolving around agriculture has been consolidated. We just lost the last crushing plant for our soybean here in South Carolina last year. We had 5 when I was growing up. We have none. So if we want to sell our soybeans right now, we have to go to the Port of Charleston And basically, if we have to sell to them at the price that they have, well, farmers don't want to be price takers; they want to be price makers. And we want to serve and we want to help. Your South Carolina Department of Agriculture has the obligation to create markets to help our people. But I think it's more important that you all know that the grocery store prices, that what we're seeing and what we're feeling out on our farms is that the farmers are not getting it. They're not seeing it. It's these huge corporations that President Trump has mentioned that have a monopoly on our system. And we've got to do all we can to work just like the president did. I want to work with the Attorney General here in South Carolina to investigate these companies because they're doing at the national level these what they call duopolies, but also the 4 major meat packers. And they've realized that 3 of them are at least foreign owned, 2 of which are majority foreign owned. And we've got to look into that. We've got, again, what's causing these prices at the grocery stores, at your local meat markets. And so that's why I think it's important that we have someone who understands our way of life. Again, our farm, we've been in existence. We've been farming the same very land since 1904. We know what it's like to go without. And I will tell you, we've got a lot of work to do, but I am committed. We don't work 9 to 5 hours on our farm. I had to tell my group that when President Trump appointed me as the state executive director for Farm Service Agency, I let them know that those hours on that door may be one thing, but we've got to stay until the job gets done. And we did that. We oversaw close to 34 service centers throughout South Carolina, one of which is right here in Greenville County. We also led around, I think it's close to 200 employees. We had a massive budget there to make sure that the programs are getting out, but also the loans for our new and beginning farmers, our veterans. Some are here today. And I expanded those programs here because I think it's important that we take care of the people who are taking care of us. Our veterans are number one priority for me. That's why I saw a lot of gaps when I was there at USDA Farm Service Agency. I think that we need to bring the services back out to the people. Your South Carolina Department of Agriculture needs to be modernized. This is the last election. Open primary was 2002. So again, a lot of things have changed in 25 years. And so we've got to make sure that we have the right leadership, someone who understands, again, not only from behind a desk, which I didn't spend much time. If you know me, I'm always moving. But someone who understands our farms, who has worked the fields of South Carolina. I think it's very important to have someone who has been endorsed by President Trump. And I say that because, again, I'm a farmer from 2 miles down a dirt road. And I think it's important of his statement that he did right before this election and the primary. And it really has moved my family and really made me stand a little taller. And that is that he said, Cody Simpson will not let South Carolina down. He never has and never will. And I think that's important. And also, when I was with him about 2 months ago, we walked in. He says, I've never done this. I've never endorsed in this race before. I said, yes, sir. I said, but we're going to win. We're going to win big. We're going to bring the people back to their South Carolina Department of Agriculture. Because I think it's very important that we highlight those issues that we just talked about earlier from your candidate there of our foreign ownership of this land. We've been highlighting it ever since I started this race because I saw it at USDA. I saw it working in other facets, but I also saw it more importantly on my farm because we farm in Sumter and Clarendon counties. And the Chinese communists own land around Shaw Air Force Base. And we farm right there. And so we did a recent video with some veterans there to highlight that issue because a lot of people were not aware. Even the folks that I was talking to in Sumter did not know. Well, I want to bring that attention to light. I went to the State House and we fought. We got it through the House, the bill to not only we banning foreign ownership of adversarial land from Russia, China, North Korea, Cuba, and as I mentioned earlier, Iran. Those countries, we have got to stop them from ownership. But I want to exactly do what Governor Sanders, she not only took a ban of the foreign adversarial ownership, but I want to take our land back, because that's our land that we have fought for. And with the 250th anniversary right now, we need to remind our children that you are an American citizen, that you own our land. And you pay taxes and you do what's right. You stand up and you salute the flag. And I will tell you, in every single patriotic song that we sing about, everything revolves around land. This is our country, our land, 'tis of thee. You look at, you even read and singing our national anthem, the land of the free. Well, this is our land, and we've got to protect it. We also have issues with overdevelopment. I was just up at Strawberry Hill not long ago. I see my friends that were able to make it with us. We had some good ice cream too, homemade. Appreciate y'all being there. And that really showed me a lot of that was peach country at one time, where they're the only, those few farmers left in that area. That's our food supply. And a lot of our country, our peach country, which we also grow more peaches in the state of South Carolina, even in the state of Georgia and any other state besides, well, I guess California is sometimes a state, but we do grow more. We do grow more peaches in South Carolina. And I like to tell everybody we are the tastier peach, by the way. But I will say that we've got to protect farms like Strawberry Hill from this overdevelopment. This annexation that's unfortunate, that I want to work with our attorney general. I want to work with other officers. I want to work with the governor. I want to work with these local governments, because we've got to stop this weaponization of annexation, where they have come in, like the town of Easley, where they have come in and they've tried to annex these farms in without the farmers' consent. They've been there. I went to the Sheriff family. They've been on the same land since 1775, Mr. Bob. 1775. They've been farming and working and laboring that land, and yet their own government has tried to annex them in and make them to change their annexation, change their zoning from obviously ag use to either commercial or residential, so they can put more condos and more of these developments. Well, that's not going to happen on my watch. Along with this solar, I don't even call them solar farms, because there's not a thing that grows out there. There's solar operations. And if you look at President Trump and what he's done at USDA and what we did under his administration, we have stopped the Chinese, because you see these panels are linked back to China. You also can see where China, again, has bought this land strategically, and they have used it in ops of solar. But really, if you look at, they've actually tried to cyber warfare. You look at other states, and they've actually tried to hack in to our military installations through this. And so there's a lot at stake here. And I think it's important, again, that we have someone who understands our way of life. I've been to every county in this state many times because I love South Carolina. This is our state. And we need good leadership. We need someone who's going to come in and reform where we are. We've got a department, again, that's in that current leadership. That there's some things that we need to modernize. And I'm the only candidate, too, that has a plan, a reform plan. I want to take what President Trump has done, and I want to doge the department to make sure that we work to make our department more efficient. And I think that's very important, because we want to cut this red tape. We want to cut these regulations, because your Department of Agriculture also regulates every single restaurant, bar, and brewery in South Carolina now. We also regulate, you go to the gas pumps, you pump your gas, that's your Department of Agriculture. Go to your food trucks or take your children off to school, which I see kind young lady here, she goes off to school, her school cafeteria. That's your Department of Agriculture. We got to make sure her food is safe for her to eat. And while the children are in school, we need to make sure it's your department to make sure they're getting that good quality food. And I want it to be local, Mr. Chairman. I want it to be local. I want it to be from your farm. So again, I just want to remind everybody, this position touches just about every facet of our lives. If you eat or drink it, they regulate it. So we've got to make sure that we have good common sense leadership who wants to get the government out of the way and bring the people back. So thank you.
And just so you know, he's got some great seeds with him. their sunflower seeds. Am I right, Cody?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So make sure that you get, I mean, can you think of a better advertising mechanism for the agriculture commissioner than a package of sunflower seeds? So thank you, Cody, so much for coming. We appreciate it. Well, the lieutenant governor is in the house, and I have Curtis Loftus now at the door. And so I am going to give him some time to introduce the schedule that we gave you has been altered somewhat due to people who showed early, people who didn't, or people who showed up and we didn't know. So we're just going with the flow here. And I would like to introduce Secretary of the Treasury, Curtis Loftus, who will do a proper introduction of Lieutenant Governor, such as she is today.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. It's nice to be in a room where there's not a lie detector test, obviously. I think you know what I'm talking about. I was lured here under false pretenses. I thought I was supposed to come and tell y'all how great I am. Now I understand I'm supposed to tell, I got to make up a few things here. It is nice to be here. I've told this story a couple times, and I believe it's the best advice I've ever gotten. Got it from my dad. And he said, when I told him I was good at politics, he said, let me tell you how to be successful. I said, I need that, Daddy. He said, what you got to remember is people like to see their politicians come see them, but they love to see them go away. Be brief. If they give you 10 minutes, take 5. If they give you 5 minutes, take 3. If they give you 3, just wave and smile, and you'll be in office forever. Lord knows if he wasn't right. It is nice to be back in Spartanburg County. I have red mud in my veins because Mom was from New Prospect and Dada's from Inman. And so we would always, when we were kids, riding up the highway about every Sunday. And of course, those of us old enough know what that means. It's 6 kids, a dog, a mom and dad, no seatbelts, all on our Buick LeSabre. She'd say, don't put that red mud on your shoes. Don't let red mud get on you. And we'd always think, well, what's the deal with the red mud? Black mud, brown mud? What's the deal? And you find out when you buy your first house, because red mud is forever. It's like a government program. It's never going to go away. Well, what I'm here for is to introduce Pam Evette. Y'all know Pam. And so I got to throw away my speech about me and talk about her. Having been around far longer than I ever thought I would be, I've watched lieutenant governors. By far the hardest job, because your job, like the vice president's job, is you've got to be super loyal and supportive of the guy who's there. Now, we're lucky. We had a good governor. Henry Masher been great. But that's your job. And so she has been in the place to see a lot, but not to say and do. She did what she was supposed to do. And I think about that a lot because I could never, right? It would take me about 10 minutes before I want to raise my hand and say, hey, I got a solution. But Pam has been able to do that. And I think with her mind, and, she was a business major and then majored in accounting. She understands big systems. She understands how our government actually works. And I hope and pray that she's elected, because what we've got to do, especially post-COVID, especially post these ballooning budgets, we've got to get control of state government. The governor and the General Assembly's had some good successes here about reorganizations and things, but now they've really got to be made to work. If we want what we all were raised about, which is small government, lower taxes, efficient government, then we've got to have the hard work being done. And I think that time is now. I think Pam is unusually the correct and the right person to be in that job at this time. When I came into office, the budget was, say, this big. And between people moving here and COVID, the budget is this big now. And it's difficult for the state to manage. I sometimes laugh when I tell somebody, it's hard to spend all that money when you've only got a year to spend it in. And that's kind of a joke, but it's the truth. That's because we need that hand on government that's going to guide us, help us get the priorities, help us know the difference between wants and needs. You know that Pam is all about lower taxes. You know she's about less regulation. You know she's a successful business person. You know she believes in the parental choice should always be at the front of everything. But what I am hoping is at the end of her term, she's going to be known as the business lady who put South Carolina on a good and sound footing, especially having been through what we've been through in the last 10 years. So I couldn't be more excited to be here and to be an endorser of Pam. I hardly ever endorse Pam. I did endorse Mr. Stumbo, not Mr. Goldfinch. And but I am extremely pleased to introduce my friend Pam, and I think she would be a great governor of South Carolina.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out on such a beautiful day. I thought I might come in here and only see 3 people, but thank you so much for coming out. I'm Pamela. Evette, Curtis, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And Curtis is right. Something I don't talk a lot about is my role as Lieutenant Governor. And he is right. I got to sit at the table when a lot of decisions were being made. I was blessed, actually, to work with a governor who, even though statutorily, constitutionally, there wasn't a lot of things that were in line for me to do. So you know what I had to do? I had to do what needed to be done. I had to be boots on the ground all across the state, finding out what businesses needed and working on it. So when I first became Lieutenant Governor, and now I only got 15 minutes, but now I'm going to start chit-chatting. But when I first became Lieutenant Governor, I didn't know what I was going to do. There was no playbook. So I said, you know what? My dad used to always say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So do a lot more listening than talking and figure out what people need. So I started traveling around the state, meeting with big businesses and small businesses, meeting with parents, teachers, organizations to say, what do you need? What's working well? What's not working so good? And you know what I heard? We need our kids to have soft skills. You know what I heard? We need our kids to understand fiscal responsibility. So I started a youth workforce initiative because as we were skilling everybody up, our kids were coming in and businesses were saying, we're struggling. I mean, you're going to laugh, but they would tell me, we have to teach them how to get here on time. And you know, when I learned all those things, my first job working at Dairy Queen, $2.10 an hour because it was seasonal, not because I'm not that old, but because it was seasonal. But it was worth what we did. We have listed over 17,000 jobs to get our kids working again. So summer is here. If you all have young ones sitting at home, a lot of our small businesses need them. So it's been amazing to work alongside the governor, and I'm proud of what we've done together. We've given you the largest tax cuts in our state's history. We've given the largest pay raises to law enforcement in our state's history. We have protected life. We have protected your Second Amendment rights. We have kept biological males out of women's sports. Now, how many of you thought that was a good idea? You can clap. It's okay to clap for good things. And you know, we were one of the first states to do that. And I remember standing on the House floor, and I was honored to have Ashley Trantham's endorsement this week too. And I remember Ashley walking up to me and saying, Lieutenant Governor, would you stand with me if I put a bill through like this? And I was like, absolutely. We were doing it before Riley Gaines was really talking about it, but thank God that we did. And because of all the wins that we've had and because of encouragement from the business community and from so many people across the state, in July of last year, I threw my hat in the ring to run for governor. And I made a promise to the people of South Carolina then that I would do what I've done during my entire time as Lieutenant Governor, that I would hit all 46 counties by the end of the year. And on December 16th, I hit the 46th county. And right before we started our Get Out the Vote tour, I had my staff look up, we did over 200 events from the time I announced to, what is it now, a week and a half ago. Because I felt it was important to sit down with everybody and hear what their hopes and dreams were for the state, what they thought was going good, what they wanted to see changed in the next administration. Because for me, it's not about being the governor for just our big businesses. It's about being the governor for our small businesses. that make up 99.4% of South Carolina's economy. It's not just being the governor for our big urban suburban areas, but being the governor for our rural areas. I'm the only person running for governor. Now there's just two of us, but I'm the only person running that made a pledge to our farmers and our foresters that I would have a liaison right in the governor's office. So in real time, we could help our farmers. And you know, farmers, we all know that their job is not easy, but their life is really hard. The day I met with my first roundtable of farmers, I just kind of Googled to see, they were harvesting corn at that point. And I wanted to see what the commodity price was on corn. And on that day, it was $4 a bushel. And when I sat down with them, they told me their break-even cost was $5 to $6. So they got up that day and went to work knowing they were going to lose money. That's what our farmers do for us. And so I want to make sure we take care of them. Forestry is a big part of our economy, just like hospitality and tourism. So you have to be the governor for everybody. You have to be the governor that sits down with everybody, and that's what I will be. And I see a world, you know, I think South Carolina is the best place to live, work, and raise your family. That's undisputable because everybody, it seems like in the nation wants to come and move here. However, I believe under an Evette administration, our best days are yet ahead of us. I see a South Carolina where we eliminate state income tax and put that money back in your pockets because you could spend it way better than us. And as you heard Curtis talk about, you're right. How are we going to do that? We're going to rein in government spending. Do you realize government spending is the #1 cause of inflation? We're going to lean in on technology so we can run more efficiently. Because as a business person, I know if you run more efficiently, it saves you money. And by leaning in on that technology, we won't bloat government with more bureaucrats because we won't need to. I also want to cut regulations. You know, President Trump, when he ended up in DC that first term, he knew regulations were stopping businesses from growing. But what most people are shocked of is here in conservative South Carolina, we have over 80,000 regulations. What I had said is we should sunset all of our regulations, bring them back up in front of the General Assembly. Let them decide what is old and outdated and let's get rid of them. If they're good, let's keep them, but let's make sure they're not written so broadly that bureaucrats can put their own spin on them. And judges. Every place I've gone in the state, people want to talk about how we elect our judges. And if there's one thing I believe wholeheartedly is people have to believe that justice is being delivered fairly. And if they don't, perception is reality. And what I've heard from everybody from our most small rural areas to our big cities is they want to see change the General Assembly electing all of our judges. Now, the governor and I for years have said that the governor should appoint and the General Assembly can confirm. It should be based on merit. Do they have what it takes to sit on the bench? It should be term limited because it's a really powerful position, so you don't want somebody there forever. And you need to make sure we have a review process because how many times have you turned on the TV and seen what happens when career criminals continue to get out over and over again and what it does to the poor people that live in those areas? So we want to make sure if a judge is ever appointed, it starts to go off the rails, that we have a mechanism to rein them back in and remove them from the bench if need be. And so I used to say June 9th is coming quick, but now June 23rd is getting here even quicker. And now there's a choice, and it's a very clear choice. You can choose from a conservative businesswoman who has been successful in the private sector and has sat at the right hand of the governor. Or you can choose from a lawyer career politician who has been in office for a long time, has never signed the front of a paycheck, has never had to go to bed at night worrying about how to cut costs, rein in costs to make payroll at the end of the week. And that's what I offer to you. My pledge to you is that we will get spending under control. We will continue to keep South Carolina safe. We will do everything we can for our military and our first responders. And that South Carolina will continue to grow and prosper. It'll be a state that you will be able to be proud of on all different levels. We'll get school choice across the finish line, finally. Something I've been fighting for since I took office. Because I don't think anybody should guide their children's educational outcomes except a parent. And I'll fight for parental rights at every turn. Because being a mom is the best title I have ever held. So I hope you all get out and vote on the 23rd. If you're here, I assume you will. But please call 20 people because turnout is crucial. I think we had only like 480,000 show up for the primary. So showing up for the runoff is really important. So call 20 people. Make sure you send out your emails, your texts. Let them know what is at stake. Because whoever wins this runoff will be the next governor of the great state of South Carolina. So I think that took me to my 15-minute mark. I was trying to speed date, but it would be an honor to be your next governor. It's been an honor to be your lieutenant governor. And if I haven't won your vote yet on the 23rd, I plan on doing it by the time we get there. So just, I know we have time for questions.
We do. And I'm on this side this time because what I really wanted to ask you from my heart is, if you are elected governor, will you push President Trump's agenda? We missed such a big opportunity with the big, beautiful bill. And I know you talked about young people and their jobs. The idea that these kids could be paying for their college tuition by waiting tables and taking their tips home is gigantic. And some of us, only a few of us are senior citizens in this group. But there was a significant opportunity for us there as well. And we just didn't feel like, one, the Senate didn't have our backs, and he's gone. So, but we need the governor to have our backs as well.
Well, thank you so much. And I know maybe you might have seen a commercial or two of mine. I have the full and total endorsement of President Trump. And, you know, President Trump, when he called me, like, you never forget. I could live like my mom to be 97 years old. I don't think I'll ever forget that phone call in its entirety. But he said, Pamela, I know all the people in your race, and you're the only one that can bring the American First agenda to South Carolina. You're the only one that has the background that can eliminate state income tax, that can get rid of regulations, that can work hard for American businesses and American workers and American farmers. And so that is 100% yes. We will bring the America First agenda, keep it live and well here in South Carolina, and always protecting the things that made America so great.
I love what you said, Ms. Evette, about lowering state income taxes, because I just spent $67 last night on 2 bags of groceries from Walmart. But one thing I'm confused about, you did say in your victory speech on Tuesday that you want to eliminate the state income taxes, lower property taxes, but at the same time, you want to fix roads, you want school choice and all these services. So how would you financially do that?
Absolutely. So great question. So for those of you who don't know, I am an accountant by study. I'm a business owner at heart. And what you do is you have to do a couple of things together. You look at all 3 buckets that we get our tax dollars from. First and foremost, we have to lean in on technology. Right now, everything is so manual. For any of you who get really frustrated when you go to the DMV, did any of you get frustrated when you go to the DMV? Poor Kevin Schwado gets beat up left and right, but do you know what type of system he works on? Cobalt. Works on a Cobalt system. Remember when Cobalt was brought into market? World War II. You're not that old? Were you a Cobalt programmer? Because we might need you. I'll need a resume before I leave. But that's the kind of thing that makes government costly. Because when you can't lean in on technology, now you're hiring people. Now government gets bigger. We're going to lean in on technology, make that investment. States that have done that have seen billions of dollars in savings by doing that. We got to cut spending. Our spending has increased, it has far surpassed our growth. And as I said earlier, it's the #1 reason for inflation. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. So we got to rein that in under control. And we can. Because Curtis was talking about COVID, you know, lots of states went into COVID, that really horrible time, with a surplus. South Carolina came out with a surplus because we reined in things like that. And you know, we never cut one program when we did it. So what does that tell you about how much extra spending we can pull back on? So when we do all that together, that gives us the money we need to do it. And we can, I think we posted our full platform on my website, PamelaEvette.com. But I've sat down with 2 different economists over the last year to come up with that plan. And it will work. And what that does, it makes us competitive. Because Florida, Texas, Tennessee, they've done it. And Fox Business about a month ago now did a great article about how in Florida and Texas's constitution, they have codified that into their constitution, that there would never be state income tax, a death tax, or a wealth tax. That's our competition, ladies and gentlemen. The days of, oh, I think we should do this are over. The days of we must do this are here. And we can do it. And it all comes, from being fiscally conservative. I did it in my business. You all do it in your homes. If you own businesses, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You pick what's most important to get done, and roads are important. And thank you to President Trump, because in that one big, beautiful bill, he took away federal permitting to make jobs go quicker. And something I've said since my first day in office is that time is money. And the longer we take for things to get done, the longer it takes, you're laughing, my old friend in the front, the longer it takes, the more expensive it is. So the more we can move away barriers, the more we can get useless regulations out of the mix, the quicker we can get it done, because it'll be cheaper. If it's cheaper, we have more money to do it. And in the new DOT modernization bill that went into effect, or is going into effect, it was passed this year in the House and the Senate, gives more control to the governor, making DOT a cabinet position. So now you got one person to blame. Instead of a board of people that you don't see and you don't know, you can blame the governor. And the governor will be me. I'll make sure that our roads are getting fixed, because accountants do really good things. We make things really efficient. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to
Hi.
hear your response on the Scout Motors Volkswagen fiasco.
Sure.
That was $1.3 billion given to a foreign company to demolish some absolutely beautiful land in Blythewood. I've been around that site. It was beautiful. We're going to get nothing in return. They're asking for more money. It's just a complete disaster. Nobody wants electric cars, and there's been all kinds of push for electric cars in the state. We don't want them.
Yeah.
And it's taxpayer money. We had no vote in it, no say in it. I'd like to hear your response.
Well, it's a great question and something top of mind for everybody. I don't think government should be picking winners and losers, right? I think when you look at some of the positive outcomes that happen, I go back to BMW. I remember reading articles about when BMW came to South Carolina. Nobody wanted BMW here either. And land was taken by eminent domain. There were all these things in reading past articles. But today, we build more BMWs here in South Carolina than we do anywhere in the world. And it's not what BMW brought when the state brought them in, but it's the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 businesses that emerged and came without any incentives that came around South Carolina. But it really is. It goes hand in hand with the question. I hope that Scout ends up being the next BMW success story. They haven't. But should the leaders of the state, should we be wishing for it not to, or should we be hoping it does? And I'm saying BMW had a good ROI. I think you have to look at every deal that comes to this state and look at what the outcome should be. Anybody that has ever run anything will tell you you should look at every deal. If it turns out to be a bad deal, then I think we can all come together and figure out how that never happens again. I mean, I didn't have a vote in that, obviously, being the lieutenant governor, but I do know business. And I think that's what President Trump has been able to bring to the table. When I sat at the White House and heard about him building his ballroom, he's the one that was on with contractors and suppliers, beating the price of things down. That's the difference you get from business people that have been out in the trenches, building a business, understanding what true ROI is, as opposed to people who have never had to be out there beating that down. Now, like I said, I think what BMW did for South Carolina was put us on the map. It is my hope that Scout will do the same thing. Now, it has not produced the first car yet. I mean, it's not in production. I am very upset that there were overruns. I'm very upset that there is this unsettling, right? Because anytime there's not transparency, people get skeptical of government. And the one thing I want to bring to government is transparency, making sure that you understand that every tax dollar that you give to the state is being used wisely. So I can't go back and fix the past. I can learn from whatever happened if it ends up being a disaster. And I will make sure that we'll bring transparency to what is happening going future when I'm your governor. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Evette. Thank you
Hi.
for being here. I am a New York City refugee. I fled communism here with my family.
Welcome.
Thank you. 4 years ago. We're happy to be here. My husband likes to call us redeemed Yankees. My question is this. Well, first, I have this question. What are your thoughts when it happened with COVID? Because we were in New York. So I kind of hear from my friends here in South Carolina that COVID wasn't too fun down here in South Carolina. You were lieutenant governor during that time. What did you think of the mask mandates, the mandates for vaccines, the mandates to stay in your home? What were your thoughts on those things when Governor McMaster decided to put some of those things in place?
Well, I got to tell you, when it was a horrible time, right? That was my first touch into the political world because I've been in the private sector the whole time. What I will tell you out of that whole scenario is South Carolina was the last state east of the Mississippi to tap on the brakes. Once we fully opened up, we never shut down again. Florida shut down twice, Texas shut down twice, South Carolina didn't. The governor tried to fight mask mandates on college campuses, allowing kids to take off their masks. Attorney General's office wouldn't fight it. My memory sets me right. The governor stood up for our South Carolina National Guard, which he's the commander in chief of, and refused to never let, well, he would not let anybody that refused a vaccine that was in our SC State Guard to lose their position. What we couldn't do is go into private businesses because that's what you're seeing in New York. Mayor Mondavi looking to take private residences and give them to other people or assume them by the government, right? We are Republicans. And what Republicans don't do is they do everything they can within government, but we don't get into people's business. You don't want us in your homes. You don't want us in your businesses. And I can tell you that we did everything we could. We actually brought everybody to the table. You can go back to SCE TV. I think they're still out there. But we brought every higher education, K through 12. We brought hospitality, tourism. We brought our distributors. We brought grocery stores. We brought all of them in, sat in a room at USC and said, tell us as government what we can do to give people confidence to come back out. Because a lot of it wasn't even just us. It was people didn't want to come out of their homes. I don't believe that anybody should tell you what to put in your body. If you don't want a vaccine, you should never get a vaccine. I got asked this when measles started to become something. Post and Courier was having an event. I was asked and they said, well, Lieutenant Governor, what are you going to do about making sure that parents vaccinate their children? I said, nobody should tell parents what to do with their children. Parents should be the only people parenting their children. And they go out and they actually do their research and they have to do what makes them feel good. So that was a lot of like questions packed into one, and I'm hoping I addressed them all independently. But what I think we did is we learned an awful lot about what should never be done. But I will tell you, South Carolina's record compared to the states around us was better than anybody else. And I know, you know, way better than New York.
Yeah.
Which
well,
should be.
Yeah. So going forward, since you said that you guys learned a lot and you learned a lot and it was your first time in, you know, as an elected official, if God forbid we ever have something like that again here as in your governor, how are you going to handle that?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we follow the Constitution and that we don't trample on anybody's rights. I'm going to make sure that nobody ever forces you to do anything that you don't want to do. I'm going to protect our men and women in uniform. And I'm going to make sure that we give all the best policies. We have to make sure that the information we give out in real time is really true information. And that we're not following somebody's will or ideology, that we're truly following science, because that's what was happening. We had ideology coming into play in a lot of instances where science was being ignored. And I'll tell you, there were a lot of doctors that came out, like my personal physician, like he was talking about, like, you know, the protocol always was you shelter people who are vulnerable and you let everybody else move around freely. For some reason that got abandoned. We shouldn't be abandoning those ideas.
Sorry, just one point.
Sure.
You talking about science and that we should go back to the science. But just as a reminder, it was the science that told us to take a vaccine that now we know without a doubt that kills people.
Well, we had competing
we know
science.
without a doubt that it creates blood clots. It creates a protein, a spike protein that continues to build up in your body for who knows how long. We know all these things. All these things have been proven solid, whether people want to believe it or not.
Yeah.
So we have to really, really be careful when we say go back to science. Are we going back to science that actually has facts, or are we going back to science? Because that's become an ideology as well.
But that's what I'm saying. Nobody should force you to do anything. You should do your own research. Right. You look at your own research. You look at that. We should put it all out there for you. Right. And that's what I said about the measles vaccine when it came up. If everybody thinks it should be, you put your information out there. You let parents and people make the decision. So when I say that, we have to make sure all the information is out there. And then you choose what's best for you. You choose what's best for your children. That is not for me to do as a governor, as your neighbor, as your friend, as your whatever. You have to do that. I literally sat at Palmetto Buff and I was on a panel with the pharma world. And the question they asked me is, you're a President Trump supporter. And this room feels that he is coming at them. And you know what I said to them? I said, I don't know why. Because the president wants everybody to be healthy, wants them to live long. Don't all of you? If you feel that your vaccines are good, if you have the data to prove it, put it out there. Make the case to all of you. It is not my job to convince the people of South Carolina or my neighbors of what they should do. It's their job. Government should not be involved in those decisions. And that's what I mean. When you talk about bringing the science out there, you got to bring it all out there, not just bits and pieces. And during COVID, a big complaint of everybody is how much was censored. And that's why let science come out in full force and let everybody make their own decisions.
And I just have one thing to comment about all this.
Sure.
So, one thing that all of us, I think, in this room, and I know a lot of people in here, that we worry about is the fact that McMaster just, right after we get rid of Simmer, the Nazi doctor that was the one, promoting all of these things during COVID, right? Then he hires her, or he appoints her second in command to be this next director of public health. So if we've learned anything, or if we, why are we putting another person, another doctor that's just like Dr. Simmer in this position? Because the person that is going to be responsible for the health of our state, it just should be a person that's a doctor that, is not liberal and woke and believes in all this stuff that we do not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
We don't want her, because I've done research on her just like I did Simmer, and these are not the kind of people we need in these kind of positions.
Well, and I came out, as soon as that happened, she was, for lack of a better term, Dr. Simmer left. Nobody's going to take that position until a new governor is elected, right? Nobody's going to roll the dice and move to South Carolina. And so she was just kind of the person standing there. That would not be my pick. I want somebody that that position, the people of South Carolina have to have confidence in whoever holds that position. And that's exactly what I would want. I want somebody that the people could look at, admire, respect, that doesn't get involved on the political sides, that can give you information like she was talking about, information on both sides, lay it all out and let people make their own decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
But and I mean, I came out on that as soon as Dr. Simmer left, and they had to have somebody acting. It's not really a point is acting until a new person is hired.
Dave Knock, Spartanburg County. Just to relap on what she was saying, if the federal government comes out and says, we mandate that everybody does this, which kind of what happened before, will you stand up against them?
Absolutely.
All right, that was just an add-on.
Yeah.
Question.
No, that's okay, but absolutely.
As far as redistricting, what's your stance on that?
Well, I was actually pretty much took the charge with that. I was in the House when it got voted on. I believe that here in South Carolina, we deserved to send 7 strong conservatives to DC to support our president. And I was very vocal about that. I sat in the back of the Senate when that was being all hashed out. And I'll tell you what it did is it just reminded me that we can never take like our conservative state for granted. That I sat in the Senate and literally heard senators talking about how we couldn't do this because it wasn't right. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, if this was in reverse, the Democrats would have came in, they'd have shoved it down our throat, they would have voted on it without amendment, and they'd have been out eating lunch before we knew it hit us, right? That's what would have happened. That's what we've seen happen. Look at the New England states, right? All blue, no Republican representation. When 42% of that area are Republicans. And so the Supreme Court was very clear. Can't gerrymander on race, but you can gerrymander based on political affiliation. And so Governor McMaster and I got together. We talked about it. We asked the General Assembly to go back and look at our maps. The House did it. You know, Representative Luke Rankin put a bill on the floor. He fought it great. It got through the House. It died in the Senate.
The other question, if I'm allowed to, is how do you stand on enforcing immigration or illegal laws?
There is no room for that here in our country. Again, thank God for President Trump closing down our borders. We need to continue to work with ICE and our federal government. You know, whenever we can, we always have. And talking to Chief Keel, he said, even during the dismal Biden years, when the federal government came and asked us how we should, you know, if we would assist them around our state, we always said yes. We need to make sure that all of our counties are equipped to be able to arrest and detain when they run across illegals. We need to do everything we can to protect our country. And it all started with a strong president that closed our borders, that stopped fentanyl, that stands up for the American public, and who has had a backbone of steel when it came to saying, if you came here illegally, you got to go back.
We've seen so much catch and release and reoffenders. So
during the Biden administration, that's exactly what it was. You know, I was downtown at the farmers market in Greenville this morning, and I was walking around, and I had a couple ask me a question. They said, and I could tell they probably would not be in this room, but he said, I worked for CNN for 20 years. And I thought, okay, here it comes. And he said, how do you feel about the safety of democracy under Republicans? I said, I feel better than I ever have. I said, under the Biden administration, we had a border that was wide open. We had fentanyl coming in. We had people out there looting and rioting and just destroying people's small businesses, hopes and dreams, and nothing happened to them. Nothing. Thank God for President Trump, who stands behind our law enforcement. Governor McMaster and I are always standing behind our law enforcement. What we need is prosecutors who are willing to prosecute and not plead down crimes. And we need judges who are willing to throw the book at them so that they're not getting back out on the street and they're not hurting us. That's what we need everywhere. Good judges. If we need more, would any of you in this room object if we were going to hire more prosecutors so cases wouldn't be plead down? I don't think any of you would object, right? When you talk about Sumter County, that has a 6,000 case backlog. How long is that taking for them to get to trial? I mean, this is where we have to start taking a real look. And if we want to keep people safe, where are the real problems? And how do we fix them? But y'all, thank you so much for all your questions. They were great questions. They always are when I'm out here. Please get out and vote. I'd be honored to have your vote on the 23rd or the 17th or 18th, because there is early voting, but just 2 days. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Lieutenant Governor, I guess you know that you heard from the medical freedom community, which is the Upstate. We're not just hokey people. We've got doctors in the house. We've got pharmacists in the house. and we've got a lot of medical professionals. So that's who you heard from, along with those who value school choice. So stretch a little. We're in the home stretch, and we're down to the last one. But before I introduce him, I think we have yet another candidate, a local candidate. Step out from behind the column, Alex Turner, and wave your hand. Alex Turner. For our Greenville folks, let me just say Alex Turner is in a runoff position for County Council in District 6. He needs, from the Spartanburg folks, some more people to knock on. If my math is right, you need us to knock on 3,800 more doors before early vote starts. So get on your walking shoes and we will be knocking. Thanks, Alex, for coming. And have I missed an elected or potential? Everybody's pointing. Have I missed anybody who's sitting here and is running for office or is an elected official? I don't know. Alex is shaking hands behind a column and I can't tell who it is. All right, they're pointing at Manfred Lewis, and I know he's nobody. Just kidding, Manfred. He didn't hear me. All right. 1 minute. Do I tell a joke? 0 minutes. All right. I do have Rhonda Billingsley here from Pickens. While she is not a governmental elected official, she has earned her pay. And what's your pay now? Oh yeah, nothing. But when Pickens was sidelined from the Republican Party for 3 months, this young lady worked her fanny off to get Pickens back in the delegation, which is the Republican Party of South Carolina. So we all appreciate her hard work, and we're hard at work getting ready for something else that we'll talk about. We're going to take just a few minutes after we finish. I would like to introduce the Attorney General, who is Alan Wilson, and Frank's holding up a finger. I still think I should have told the joke. Actually, my husband's got the best joke. It's about a pirate. No, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Doug. I'm just wasting time. Like I said, this is the most fun job I ever had. If I haven't told you, I used to be a middle school math teacher. And I was used to this because back in the day, they would come on the intercom and say, we're in a lockdown. That generally meant some child went crazy and everybody else had to stay in their class. And sometimes the lesson was complete and you were still in the room with 32 adolescents for another hour and a half. I could kill some time then. But now I would like to introduce to you the Attorney General. Alan Wilson is in the house. Candidate for governor. This is your spot. Come right on here. And I have just asked several questions of those who've been in front of us today. Where do you hail from? If it's not Columbia, that's the first thing you have to admit.
Where do I live?
Yeah.
I live in Lexington.
Is that Columbia?
No, ma'am, it's Lexington County.
Okay, good.
Lexington means Lexington. Hey, good. Is it morning yet? I don't even know. It's 12:01. Good afternoon. Let me try it again. Good afternoon. Okay, we're awake. Everyone, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. First off, it's been an incredible year. I've been on this right now for a year, and it's been an honor to try to serve as your Attorney General and now offering myself as a candidate for governor. I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve in my current capacity. I view this as a job interview, and every one of you is my boss. So as part of the job interview, I look forward to talking to you about my vision for our state. I also look forward to answering your questions. But before I talk about what I have done as your Attorney General and why that merits a promotion to the office of governor and what I will do as governor if you decide to elect me and hire me for that job, I feel like I need to lay the foundation for who I am as a person. Because what I say I'm going to do and what I have done are great, but I think I want you to know who I am as a man, who I am as a person. So if you allow me the opportunity to tell you 3 brief, impactful stories in my life that illustrate who I am. First off, my mother and my father had me in 1973. My father was a Vietnam veteran who'd come back from Vietnam, decided he didn't want to be an airborne infantry ranger and went to flight school. So he and mom, they got married here in South Carolina, and then he went to flight school in Texas. That's where I was born, and then he was stationed back at Fort Bragg. In August of 75, my dad was killed tragically in a helicopter accident, in a training accident in Fort Bragg. My mom came back home when I was 2 years old. A few short later, she reconnected with an old flame, a young attorney named Joe Wilson. They got married. He adopted me. I tell you that story because I remember being a small child, 5 or 6 years old, and my dad would walk into my room every night and hear my prayers. And he would say things to me like, Alan, there are little boys in this world who don't have a daddy in their life. You are so blessed that God allowed you to have 2 daddies that loved you with all of their heart. And then he would point to the 2 pictures by my bedside table, a picture of himself and my biological father. And it was that type of love and not letting me forget where I came from that really kind of imprinted on me. He and my mother had 3 other children, my 3 brothers. The way that they raised us resulted in all 4 of us becoming Eagle Scouts. All 4 of us became officers in the military, and all 4 of us served overseas. Folks, that is not me bragging on me or my brothers. That is me bragging on my mom and dad, because that's not catching lightning in a bottle when you repeat it 4 times. That is how we were raised. Now, I want to fast forward. I am a 30-year combat veteran, but in August of 2004, I was a 31-year-old captain who was assigned to lead a 2,600-mile convoy round trip through the middle of Iraq to pick up supplies to bring it back to my forward operating base. As the convoy commander, we were coming back through the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. I was in the commander's vehicle, the second vehicle back. At that time, there was a violent explosion right outside of my vehicle, right kind of behind me. The explosion was jarring. It threw my vehicle forward several feet. A wave of soot and smoke enveloped the vehicle. Dust came up from the inside. Day turned to night. My hearing was impaired. I could hear the muffled screams over the radio. People were freaking out. I began to give orders to secure the kill zone because we expected incoming. And as I was giving the orders, what I saw changed me forever. The lead gunship with 3 soldiers, all about 22 to 23 years old, 3 soldiers drove back into the kill zone because the tractor trailer truck behind me had caught on fire. And they climbed onto that tractor trailer truck to pull those soldiers out and threw them into the gunship. And then we left the area. We went about 10 kilometers away and we got into the forward operating base. I got out of my vehicle and walked around it. And I looked at the back of my vehicle and it was riddled with shrapnel holes, some as big as golf balls. What had happened when we took full stock of it, the shrapnel had gone through my vehicle, exiting out of the windshield, missing me and the other 2 soldiers by inches. I missed dying by inches, and they missed dying by inches. Now, I tell you that story for 2 reasons. There's a couple of takeaways from it. The first, when you see the heroism of kids barely out of high school, driving into what we call the kill zone, driving into an area they were expecting to be shot, climbing onto a tractor trailer truck that they expected to blow up any second. And by the way, it did about 90 seconds after we left the area. And they do so without any regard for their personal safety. You are inspired by that because kids showing that kind of courage under potentially imminent death makes everything that you do in life kind of brings it into perspective. When people ask me, Alan, do you have the courage to do what is right, to govern, the courage to do what is right, to lead? I say to them, I've seen courage by kids, and if they can do what they did that day, then I can have the courage to lead here in South Carolina. The second reason I tell you that story is when you face death, when you face a mortal event like I did, and you survive it, it means you've been given a second chance. God spared every soldier on that convoy that day. I got a second chance. The last thing I want to do is live my life with any regrets. There's a reason I'm on this earth. And one of the reasons I'm running for governor is because I want to leave as big a imprint, as big a footprint on my state and my community and my family as I possibly can. That's what drives me to serve, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't want to waste my second chance. Thank you. The third impactful story, and we'll get into the meat, but I'm sure what you want to hear. The third impactful story that I want to share with all of you is about 4 years ago when I was heading into, and I can say it now, the first Murdaugh trial. My wife was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. She underwent extensive chemotherapy. It made her sick. It made her hair start to fall out. She had a double mastectomy, numerous reconstructive surgeries, and it was a very difficult time for us. I was on the road a lot, working and having to come home. Our kids were younger, and I remember the day that she came to me and she said, "Alan, I don't want our kids to watch my hair fall out, so will you shave my head?" So I took her out on the back porch, and I shaved her head in front of our kids. And I remember watching my daughter's face, my son's face, as their mom's blonde hair fell to the floor. And for the first time, she looked like a cancer patient. And it was kind of jarring, and it kind of shocked me. Now, the good news is, the good news to the story is my wife is a cancer survivor. She survived, so praise God, right? But I tell you that story for a couple of reasons. That story taught me priorities, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But my wife, unlike me, or when I faced my mortal event, I didn't have time to think about my future or my lack thereof, right? I was reacting. Training kicks in. The explosion happened, boom. But she had nothing but time to think about whether she would live or die in the years to come. We would talk about whether she would see our daughter walk down the aisle or our son graduate high school. By the way, he graduated high school 3 weeks ago. She saw it. She had nothing but time. And that is a different kind of courage that inspires me to this day. The other thing it taught me was about priorities. And many of you probably in this room have had a loved one that you've lost, or a loved one that you thought you were going to lose or scared you were going to lose and they didn't. And it brings life into perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to be your governor. I love being your attorney general, and you've reelected me 4 times. Thank you for that. And it's a wonderful job, but it's just a title. It's all it is. It's a title. The perks and privileges that come with titles, they're not endearing. They're not enduring. Wealth, power, fame, it's not endearing or enduring. What is endearing and what is enduring is our relationship with our God through our faith and our relationship to each other, to our friends, to our family, through our community, through involvement in organizations like this, through rooms like this. Many of you are probably strangers to me, and I'm a stranger to you, and I see some friends out there. But here's the thing. We are all bound together. We might bicker and fight. We're doing it right now in a primary. But the point is we have a common thread of values and principles that we adhere to. And we may differ on some of the aspects of those, but there is a common thread that binds us. And that is what I focus on. To me, that is where my priorities are. I believe that a week from Tuesday, I will win this nomination. I believe it in my bone marrow. But if it's not God's will for me to win, my feet are on the ground because my priorities are right. I wanted you to hear that from me. Now I'm going to pivot. Those are some impactful stories that give you a sense of who I am as a person. Have any of you, and I've said this in all my speeches, but I love sports metaphors. Have any of you ever watched a football game where you see your favorite team playing not to lose the game when you wish they were playing to win the game? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, congratulations. You're all Gamecock fans. All right. Maybe Tiger fans on some seasons. Tigers do better usually. But what I'm saying is that sometimes you see the team playing to the status quo. They're trying to nurse or milk the clock because they're afraid of failing. They're afraid of doing big and bold things. And so they keep running the same plays over and over and over. They engage in the status quo. Ladies and gentlemen, I have at times seen South Carolina government playing not to lose when we should be playing to win. We should be playing to win the game. But sometimes what holds us back is the political will to do what needs to be done because we're afraid of failure. We're afraid to fail. Let me tell you my view of failure. And another sports metaphor or analogy is I read a book years ago that talked about an interview with Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan, who in my opinion is the greatest NBA athlete of all time, not LeBron, sorry y'all, I'm a Jordan man. But Michael Jordan once said that he failed his way to the top. What did he mean by that? What did he mean when he said he failed his way to the top? What he meant by that is everyone remembers those last second shots from beyond a three-point arc where he swishes the net in the national championship game. They remember those feats of aerial acrobatics where he defied gravity, jumping from the free throw line and slam dunking the ball. What they don't talk about are the thousands of times where he failed to hit the basket when he needed to that led to him losing hundreds of games over his 25, 30-year basketball career. They don't talk about that. But what Michael Jordan was saying is he says, I took the shots that no one was willing to take. I did the things that no one was willing to do or didn't think could be done. And yes, I failed. I missed shots from time to time, but I kept taking them over and over and over and over and over again. And in the aggregate of my entire career, became the greatest basketball player of all time in modern basketball history. Ladies and gentlemen, I aspire to be the Michael Jordan of governors in South Carolina. I'm going to take shots. And people say all the time, legislative state, weak governor, you're not going to be able to move the needle. First off, the office of governor might be weaker relative to the legislature in the way our Constitution is written, but it is not a weak office. It is only a weak office if its occupant is weak, okay? I'm going to take shots, and I'm going to get slapped down, and I'm going to miss them. I'm going to make mistakes. We all do. I'm not selling you perfection here. What I'm going to tell you is, I'm like Michael Jordan. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep going back and back again and again and again, and we're going to keep doing it. And we're not going to be a transitional governorship. We're going to be a transformational governorship. Okay, that is what I intend to do. As a 30-year combat veteran, as someone, as Attorney General, and as a career prosecutor, I have fought for you and fought for your families. I have overseen the prosecution of thousands of child predators, violent criminals, drug traffickers, and corrupt officials. Which is why over 80% of the elected Republican sheriffs in South Carolina have endorsed me in the race for governor. Over 80%, because I've delivered results. They know what I've done. Were we perfect? No. But did we deliver results? Yes. I have brought over hundreds of legal actions or been involved in hundreds of legal actions against the Biden and Obama administrations. I've defended life to the Supreme Court in the overturning of Roe v. Wade, defending the heartbeat bill twice in a court of law. I have fought to defend and protect parental rights. We got a Supreme Court case a week and a half ago that I was part of where we rescinded a Biden-era Title IX rule that allowed boys and the girls spaces in public institutions. We got that overturned. We are still delivering results. As I am running for governor, I'm delivering results. People talk about dodging fraud, waste, and abuse from government. As your Attorney General, I have recovered over $2 billion. Let me say that again, over $2 billion on behalf of you, the people of South Carolina. Over $2 billion. Now, I'm going to start winding up because I think I'm getting close to the end of my 15 minutes, and I want to give you the balance of the time. But before we do, I want to say a couple of things before we go to the Q&A portion. Ladies and gentlemen, when I become your governor, I want you to understand this. I will not be perfect. I will make mistakes. If you are looking to vote or support somebody who you are going to agree with 100% of the time, if you're looking for somebody who won't ever let you down, I'm not your candidate, and you should support the other person because I can't sell you perfection. But this is what I will sell you. I will commit to you this. I will be accessible to you. I will be accountable to you, and I will fight for you. That is what I promise. I'm not running to be your pastor. I'm not running to be your savior. Someone else has those jobs. I will be open to correction. I will be open to different points of view. So, looking at what we just went through last Tuesday, not everybody in this room was probably for me. Some of you may not be for me now. Some of you may still be undecided. But if you supported Nancy Mace because you saw her as a maverick who shook the institutions around her, whether you loved it or hated it, if you were for her because of that, there is a home with you. With me. Join the fight with me. If you supported Ralph Norman because you viewed him as a conservative juggernaut who challenged the status quo, there's a home with me. Come on board because I share those values with Ralph. If you liked Rom Reddy, the plain-spoken outsider businessman with a message of reforming government, there is a home for you with the Wilson for Governor campaign, and I invite you to come in. I'm okay that I wasn't your first choice. In this entire campaign season I've campaigned on, if I can't be your first choice in the primary, can I be your second choice in the runoff? I'm inviting each and every one of you to join me. I will fight for you. I will work as hard as I can to be the best governor for you as I can be, and I will always have an open door policy with each and every one of you. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for your service as Attorney General and the accessibility that I enjoyed. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Hope that would continue in your role as governor. I have my oldest grandson is 36. My oldest great-grandson is 6. Probably if you're elected governor, you will be the governor for 8 years. What can you say to my grandson and to my great-grandson, our family, that you expect to make things different for them in South Carolina going forward by the time you end 8 years of your career here?
So I told y'all earlier I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout, actually. And the number one rule that I learned when you enter a campsite, what is the rule? Does anyone remember when you leave a campsite? Leave it better than you found it, right? I view South Carolina the way that young Boy Scout viewed a campsite. I want to leave it better than I found it. You know, for those of you who've watched me on TV, you've watched my kids grow up as I've served as your Attorney General. I'm fighting for their future because they're my children. But here's the thing. Every single one of you has children or grandchildren, or in this case, great-grandchildren. If I can save and preserve my children's future, that is saving and preserving your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren's future. That is what I want to do. I say this all the time. I will say it until the end of the campaign. Everything that I do, and my number one priority, is to make South Carolina more affordable for your families, to make our economy more profitable for your businesses, and to make our government more accountable to you. And to those young people out there, I want to say this to you. Please don't put politicians on a pedestal. We should not be the people look up to. We should be like a plumber who comes to your house to fix your toilet, or an electrician who fixes your electrical circuits in your house. You hire us to fix something, but listen, we are no better than anyone else. And so what I want young people to learn from is this. As your governor, I will do my best to emulate someone of high moral character and someone that you would want to aspire to be. But at the end of the day, I am hired to fix our government, to move our government forward. I will not be the kind of governor who waits for bills to come to my desk, and sign good bills and veto bad bills. I think the bully pulpit of the governor's office should be used, not just to move legislation in the General Assembly, but to inspire a whole new generation of people out there. And I'll tell people all the time, it's not Donald Trump's business background that makes him an effective president. What makes him an effective president is his ability to connect with voters, his ability to influence and inspire voters. That is what makes him a good executive. And I think that's what will make me a good executive, because I will inspire an entire new generation of grandkids who one day, I hope, when I'm sitting in a rocking chair, I will be able to watch them take over and govern the state with the same values that bring us here today.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for recently spearheading that raid on that company in
Abbeville.
Yes, and there was about 48 people were arrested. A lot of them were illegals. A few of them were Americans. And I did watch your news conference that day, and you did say repeatedly that you were going after people that were committing criminal acts and not people that were putting food on the table.
Correct.
So my question to you is, that comment of putting food on the table, were you referring to Americans as that way, or illegals?
Well, here's the thing. What one of the members of the media was asking was kind of trying to catch me in the trap of, you're targeting people who don't look or sound like you. No, we're not out there kicking in the doors of people who don't look and sound like us. We're kicking down the doors, and I say that with air quotes, right? We're going after people who are breaking the law. But when we saw people breaking federal law, which is our immigration laws, we brought in ICE and Homeland Security to be able to be a partner with us, to be able to, those arrests, those 48 arrests were incidental to the arrests that we were targeting. And as governor, all law enforcement agencies in South Carolina will be directed to support all federal law enforcement initiatives at the federal level to enforce federal immigration laws. I have twice gone to the Supreme Court to defend the rights of Arizona and Texas to pass state-level immigration laws, which the Obama and Biden administrations fought us on. I've also defended South Carolina's immigration laws back in 2012 successfully. partly successful. The court struck down portions of it. And I will continue as a matter of policy to encourage local law enforcement and require all federal enforcement to support immigration efforts to the 287G program and by state executive order.
Mr. Attorney General, my name is Rick Thompson, and I have some very serious concerns about the state of South Carolina. We've had a Republican in the governor's mansion for 24 years. And as we look at the state, I see some real opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Our education system is number 43 in the nation. Our roads and infrastructure, most would describe it as a mess. And then I look at our state income taxes. We still have the highest state income taxes in the Southeast. Most would describe that from a business standpoint as we need a plan. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
My thoughts on the income tax?
All three.
Okay, income tax, and what was the other one? Roads?
Roads and infrastructure and education.
Okay, we'll start with the income tax. That's a lot to unpack, so be patient with me. All right, folks, I looked going back 78 years. There have only been 8 times in 78 years of state government spending that South Carolina spent less money from one year to the next. The last time we spent less money from one year to the next was in the 3 years after COVID, but only 8 times out of 77 years did we spend less money from one year to the next. When you look at the map of the United States, South Carolina, as you said, has the highest income tax of any state. You have to go as far as New Jersey. Any friends from New Jersey here? Okay, you got to go to New Jersey. I married a Jersey girl, so I speak fluent Yankee. I know, Rick. Yeah, absolutely. I even understand the dirty words. Anyway, you have to go as far as New Jersey or as far west as either Wisconsin or Washington State to find a state with a higher income tax. 3 states already have 0% income tax in this region of the state. 5 other states have passed laws that will eventually take them to 0% income tax. Well, if you look at South Carolina over the last 10 years, not 77, just the last 10 years, okay, state government spending has grown at an average. This is the average rate of 6.5% over that 10-year period. State populations have only grown at 3.2%. What does that mean? We're spending more than twice as fast as we're growing. Run a business like that for 10 years and let me know how it goes for you. So we do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. That is what's at the crux of it. So people like, well, Alan, 45 to 47% of state government revenues comes from income tax revenues. So it's kind of like Indiana Jones taking the golden idol and swapping it with a bag of sand. How do you do that and still fund government, right? It's not hard, folks. This is what I propose we do. If we had, over the last 10 years, had we brought down the rate of government spending down to the rate of population on average each year, we could have returned nearly $20 billion to the taxpayers in South Carolina. Now, if we do that each year and we cap spending to the rate of population growth, each year you're going to get less and less income tax revenue, and that income tax revenue is going to go down as the income tax rate goes down. Okay, but what's going to happen if you are keeping more money in your pocket as a result of the reduction in the income tax? Are you putting that money in your mattress? Are you putting that money in a mason jar? Are you putting it and burying it in the backyard? No. You're spending it. You're consuming. You're investing. You're growing your business. You are, you're hiring additional people. And then all of a sudden, the economy starts to grow, right? And then other forms of tax revenue start to go up. So as the income revenue is going down each year incrementally, and other forms of revenue are coming up, and of course, the loss of that income tax revenue gets absorbed by a growing economy. That's how you pay for it over time. Not through spending, but through growth of revenue. And that is what we do. Now, here's something else that happens. Not only do people spend more money in other forms of tax revenue because they're buying and consuming and investing and creating companies, but here's another thing. People invest in South Carolina. Some of you have heard me tell this story before. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was out in Arizona at an attorney general conference, and a good friend of mine had just started a company, and he wanted to give me a tour. So he came and picked me up in his car at the hotel. We drove over in Scottsdale to his new company. It was a beautiful building, walked around, had lunch. We talked about it. He was bringing me back to the hotel. And he was saying how he would one day like to move he would like to move to the Southeast. He was looking for a Southeastern base of operations. I said, come to South Carolina. He said, well, Alan, what's your income tax there? I looked at my friend and I said, I think it was 6.5% at the time. He says, you call me when it's 0 and I will seriously think about investing in South Carolina. That young man was Charlie Kirk, and that business was Turning Point USA. Okay? There are thousands of Charlie Kirks out there who want to come and invest in our state, whether they want to move here or bring their businesses here and put that money in here, but that is part of what grows the economy. Now, on infrastructure, let's talk about that real quick. We are not being as innovative as we should when it comes to funding of infrastructure and reforming infrastructure. I agree with Ralph Norman 100%. I agree with some of the other folks that were running for governor. We need to overhaul the Department of Transportation. We need to modernize it. We need to use new technologies. We need new personnel in the right positions. But here are some ideas. As governor, remember I talked about the Michael Jordan? We want to try things that are innovative, that might fail but could work. Let me give you some examples. Who is the largest landowner in the state of South Carolina? The state of South Carolina. So you know those grassy medians between the interstates? We own all of that. Why don't we monetize it? There are a number of ways we can monetize it. We can monetize. One example would be is we could create expressways, right, that are optional and that you could use the Easy Pass, and for people that want to use them. People driving through I-85 or people driving 95. I'm not saying we will do it. I'm saying that's one thing. Or we could lease it to telecommunication companies who want to lay fiber optic cables, or we could lease it to energy companies laying gas pipelines and collect the revenue. There are currently 15 unused rest areas in South Carolina. They're dead. They're dormant. They're not being used. How about a pilot program where we get our federal delegation to lobby the federal government to remove the federal prohibitions, and let's privatize some rest areas and do pilot projects where you can have privatized, and we want to make sure we check with the petroleum marketers convenience store, because I don't want to put anyone on the interstate out of business, but jack up with a convenience fee, the use of these convenience stores or these restaurants on the rest areas, privatize them. And then let's let people who don't drive to our state, but drive through our state, help us pay for our infrastructure, because that's what they're doing to us, right? I mean, these are ideas that we should look at. Now, some will work, some might not work, but there are things that we can do to increase revenue. And of course, increasing revenue, there needs to be more oversight. Okay, a lot more oversight, because I am seeing a lot of money spent on infrastructure, but I ain't seeing the infrastructure. And I would like to see the receipts on that. And that's what we want to do through our Doging efforts. Okay. I'm going to move on. There's more I could talk about, but I want to keep my comments short for other questions. You talked about education. I grew up with my 3 brothers in the 1980s. All 4 of us were public school kids. But public school wasn't meeting my needs. I had either ADHD or ADD, but I wasn't flourishing in public school like the way my brothers were. So my parents sacrificed to send me to a small Christian school. They really couldn't afford it, but they found a way to send me there. And I ended up graduating from high school in that private Christian school. My brothers, all 3 of my brothers, continued on in public school, and they all graduated and they flourished. I tell people, all 3 of my brothers graduated top of their class and student body president. I graduated top 10 in my class at that Christian school. Now, there were 11 graduates in my class. But I want to give parents the opportunities that my parents didn't have, to give their children the opportunities that didn't come easy to us, to give them the option, to give them the choice, to take their kids, to give their kids the best, academic attention as possible. If kids growing up under the same roof, the same values, raised by the same parents, or have individualized educational needs that are different, then why do we do one size fits all for kids across the land? Other things I would like to do on the public education front, I would like to expand dual enrollment programs, which we do have them in state, but they're not uniform and they're not universal. You know what dual enrollment programs are? They're programs that allow kids in high school, while they're in high school, to knock out general education requirements for a 2 or 4 year degree, postgraduate. The problem is they're not uniform or universal in every school district, because some people don't have access to have partnerships with flagship universities or technical colleges. So here's the thing. First off, for kids who have the aptitude and the inclination, they should have the opportunity to participate in a dual enrollment program. My niece graduated high school with the equivalent of a 2 year associate's degree before she ever went into college. There are kids out there that can knock out half of a 4-year degree or an entire 2-year degree, making higher education more accessible and more affordable to the kids who need it. And not every kid needs 4 years of debt. Sometimes an associate's degree is fine. And by the way, imagine graduating high school as a certified electrician, right? Making $150,000 a year, like by the time you're 20 years old, and by the time you're 25, if you get your master's certification, you're making $300,000. Maybe you're a radiological tech or a medical tech or an oral hygienist or a coder or a welder, whatever it is you want to do. We got to pipeline kids and not have to stack them outside of high school. Let's bake that into their high school education and streamline it. We've got to modernize how we think about education. And those are some of the things that I would do as governor. The last thing I'll say about those 3 issues, folks, I don't have the answer to every question or the solution to every problem. And some of the best ideas I've come up with, I didn't come up with them. I learned about them from people like y'all in rooms like this. So my campaign is a vehicle for not Alan Wilson's ideas, but for the best ideas. And my administration will be a vehicle for the best ideas. And I invite you to get in the boat and row with me. Okay, next question.
Hi, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure everybody here is really tired of hearing me ask the same question, but I'm sorry. My question is about medical freedom. I wanted to know, and you were the AG during the whole COVID pandemic thing that was going on. I'm a refugee from New York City, so I was there, and that's why I'm here for medical freedom.
Welcome to Free America.
Thank you. My question is, what are your thoughts about the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the mandates to stay in your home, and yeah, just what do you think about that? What are your first thoughts about that? Okay, so you give it a big thumbs down.
Yes, and if I may, I'm gonna try to make my answer shorter than the last one, but I actually was involved in the OSHA mandate lawsuit. I was one of the states that sued on the OSHA mandate that required 80 million Americans to get the vaccine. I was also against the federal contractor mandates. I actually got involved in lawsuits that were requiring children to wear masks to try to prevent that from happening in colleges and obviously local school districts. So every single time that there was a cause of action I could bring, with either by myself or with other states, to push back on that overreach by the WHO and the Biden administration, I was part of it.
Okay, so now from what I've heard as AG, you didn't push back as hard as you should have when it came to certain mandates that were coming down from federal government. And
Can you give me an example?
I was living in New York at that time. I'm just going by what I've been told here or there. That
So it was written on the internet?
No.
Must be true.
No. I'm looking for you to clarify if what I've heard from other people, if that's.
Yes, ma'am. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Liz.
Liz.
You sat next to me in camp at the restaurant. Remember? You love my accent.
No, Liz, I remember coming to camp that morning. I remember we talked about the accent. Again, I married a Jersey girl. I understand Yankee.
I know. I'm from New York.
Teasing.
That's okay.
Liz, someone's saying I didn't push back hard enough.
Right.
That is subjective.
I was just going to say
Okay.
that. So
here's what I would tell people, folks. In the Office of Attorney General, I tell people I bring cases, like when it comes to prosecuting criminals, I don't prosecute what I believe. I prosecute what I can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. When it comes to litigating cases, I don't litigate based on what I believe. I litigate based on what I can under the law, right? So again, there are laws that are passed that constrain the office of the AG. There are laws that are passed that are bad laws, but they're not unconstitutional. You can't have a bad law that is not unconstitutional, and that has to be changed as a matter of policy. But when I can use a lawsuit to challenge something that is bad because it is illegal or improperly being applied, or I disagree with the court ruling, I always push back. But sometimes people see me when I don't bring a lawsuit. It's not that I don't want to, or it's not that I'm agreeing with the law. I'm saying that's not the right remedy. There's 3 kinds of remedies you can get from your government. If y'all can think of a third one, let me know. The first one are legal remedies. Indict bad guys in government, right? Or sue the government to stop or enjoin the government or compel the government to do something they're supposed to do under law. So there's the legal remedy. The second remedy is an administrative remedy. That is, you want to get a permit to do something, you follow a process administratively, and you get an outcome. And the third one is political remedies. People always forget the political remedies. Political remedies are you all being ticked off and coming to a room like this and coming at people like me either me or people like me, like the people who are passing the laws or failing to pass the laws or refusing to enforce the laws, and you put political pressure, or you throw them out at the ballot box, or you lean on them to vote the right way. But there are political remedies, but not every remedy is a legal remedy. And sometimes we just didn't have the legal hook. And when people didn't see us using the legal hook, it's because it didn't exist. And trust me, I leaned on my lawyer team to push for that.
And I'm glad that you get the chance to explain that. And just one quick thing, if you're put in governor's office and ever we have another pandemic again, God forbid, how are you going to handle that?
We're in free America, Liz. We're going to remain in free America. I'm going to try to give shorter answers, guys. Y'all are asking great questions.
Attorney General, thank you for being here and taking
What's your name?
Ray.
Ray.
Oh,
Call me Alan. Y'all keep calling me Attorney General or Mr. Wilson. My dad's Mr. Wilson. I'm just Alan. So.
As the World Economic Forum said, you will not own anything and you'll be happy. There's, a lot of talk about the South Carolina income tax and trying to get that down to zero. And I think there's a bill that was passed to lower it down over time. But the big problem in South Carolina, with many places, is that we have so many tax streams that we don't own our property, we don't own our vehicles, because if you don't pay the tax, the state,
You rent your
takes it
property
over.
from the government, even after you paid it off.
We rent it all from the government. So there are all these tax streams. So, and maybe you're not looking for solutions at this point, but will you bring in like a ROM Ready Doge SC and eliminate all these agencies, bring down the cost of government through a Doge type program, so that maybe that will lower our tax burdens and maybe eliminate some of these taxes and develop some other ways, consumer taxes and things, so that we can truly own our property.
So I'm sorry, is it Ray? Were you going to ask
Ray.
me a question? Or?
Yes. Yeah. The question is, how are you going to bring efficiency into government so that we can bring down the cost of government and then maybe eliminate some of these tax streams so we can truly own our property for one.
So was that the question?
Yes.
Sorry, Ray. I want to make sure. I want
it's
to
kind of
answer.
convoluted, but yeah.
No, it's not. No, you were teeing it up for me, but I wanted to answer the question you were thinking. You just gave it to me. Thank you, Ray. So first off, past behavior is predictive of future behavior. Last summer, folks, it was about this time. You can go back and Google it. My office uncovered $20 million in Medicaid fraud at the Department of Health and Human Services. It was a bunch of people who were defrauding the government for a couple of reasons. We had antiquated technologies not designed to catch the fraud. We also had personnel who weren't doing what they needed to do to use the technologies to catch the fraud. Now, we indicted all the bad guys that stole $20 million, but that was over a 4 or 5 year period. But here's the thing. I tell people all the time, I indicted Department of Transportation employees a couple months ago who were committing fraud at the Department of Transportation. One of the reasons I've been running for governor is you can indict corrupt criminal government. You can't indict incompetent government. That is a function of policy and personnel, which the governor has the access to be able to effectuate that. But you can't indict bad government. And so, for instance, that $20 million that was defrauded was an invisible tax on all of us in this room. We all paid for that because it didn't go to its intended purpose. So I've already been doing it with the power of the Attorney General's office. Mr. Norman and Mr. Reddy and Ms. Mace and the other candidates that are running, we've all talked about doging government. We're all on board with that. Mike Rickenbaugh, and by the way, the only candidate in the race for governor who's given you 6 months to evaluate my choice for lieutenant governor, right? And if I tell people all the time, quick sidebar, I trust my judgment in Mike so much that I was willing to give you 6 months to evaluate him. And I trust Mike so much that I gave you 6 months to evaluate him and me for my judgment. The type of people that I plan to put in my administration, he's Exhibit A. And I did that early on purpose because while you don't get to vote for the lieutenant governor anymore, I'm giving you the right to vote for the lieutenant governor because my guy has been out there for 6 months. The other candidate running this race has not identified who their lieutenant governor will be. And we've heard all kinds of rumors. It's based on depending on who you talk to. I wanted you to know that's who's going to put. That is the type of people I'm going to socialize in my administration. But Mike is going to help me chair the Families First Audit Initiative. And I call it Families First because families are the building block of society. And when government is defrauded and when government is archaic and antiquated, outdated, and outmoded, it hurts families because the cost of government goes up, the cost of living. goes up, affordability goes down. And so the first thing we want to do is do a top-down audit of government. I want to then lay out a framework for funding using advanced technologies like artificial intelligence or blockchain technologies to make it impossible to fraud government and to identify fraud earlier, and then to, when it's criminal, get it prosecuted. When it's incompetent, you remove it or replace the policy or remove the regulation. And so that is the first thing that we're going to do through our Families First Audit Initiative, which is basically another version of Doge. Okay, that's what it is, and that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to start putting that together literally the day after I'm elected in November. One other thing I want to do, I believe in public comments. Every single one of you interfaces with a state agency at some point. It could be LLR, it could be DOT, it could be Department of Employment Workforce, it could be HHS, mental health, DSS, whatever the agency is. As we do this audit, I want to have an open forum where people can come and engage in public comments, because I want the public to be part of the solution. All the solutions can't come from the administration or the government. A lot of them are going to have to come from your input, and I want to make sure you guys have a seat at the table through that public commenting process. Sorry, Ray.
Appreciate that, and I'm glad you brought up the Lieutenant Governor you mentioned, because I appreciate that you actually identified somebody where the other candidates have not. So we do have a chance to evaluate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Really long.
Thank you. I know there would be 100 more questions from this group, but we promised these people that they could actually leave. And he's already spent 13 more minutes here than I know. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to give you 5. And then I get to wrap it up.
Okay.
Because I have something to say.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate that. Mr. Wilson, I was there a couple times when you came to camp, spoke. I talked to you personally, and it's been a very tough decision to decide who I want to be the next governor. And up until a few minutes ago, I thought I made my decision, but you made a couple comments that are very concerning.
Okay.
Now, the only person that I ever heard bring this up, and it was not you, sir, was Ron Reddy. He's the one that brought up doing the leasing of the sideways on the highways for gas lines, for utilities, and also regarding privatizing the rest stops, things of that nature. And all of a sudden, today is the first time I heard you say that. And I'm not sure what I'm missing or why I never heard it before.
Well, I've said it in almost every speech when people talk about infrastructure. If some of y'all heard me, I'm hearing people nodding yes that I've said it. First off, understand this, guys. I'm going to say a lot. You campaign on a bumper sticker, but you govern in a manual. Okay? We all say things because I have 30 seconds on a debate to give you an answer. I had 15 or so minutes to do Q&A. I'm throwing you guys innovative ideas. Now, that doesn't mean every single, remember the Michael Jordan analogy? Not every idea when it goes from paper to application will land. That's embarrassing. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing with you. That's funny. I'm just telling you, we got to think outside the box. How do we collect revenue from people who use our state to travel through but don't actually stay here? Like, I'm trying to find a way to bring in revenues and share it with the rest of the country, because they certainly charge us. But I'm not saying that every single idea that I mention is going to be implemented. I'm saying is I'm just giving you an idea of how I think. And of course, we'll do a cost benefit analysis. We'll take public comment, but not every idea that I talk about is going to actually go into application. I'm just trying to give you a way that I approach problems.
Okay, I understand that. My comment was basically, well, that's the first time when I heard you say that today. That's all.
It's the first time you've heard me say it, but I've said it in hundreds of speeches over the last 12 months.
It's okay. I just wanted to bring that to attention, so I have to make a decision, but I appreciate your answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Dave Knock, Spartanburg County. I just wanted to recap on your education. I don't think the education system, it's our curriculum that's being taught. I don't think there's a soul in here that doesn't know what math, geography, and social studies is. Our children don't get that. We're educating tomorrow's, pardon the expression, liberals. Okay, we need to get real education back in our schools. I know that this format comes out of, I know a little bit too much, but any which way, is there anything you can do
Yeah.
about getting the education system changed in our state
Yeah.
where people can add 1 and 1 and it's not 3?
Absolutely. Look. So first off, y'all, I'm giving you quick answers, and if I don't say something, it doesn't mean I haven't thought about it, don't have a policy, so don't hold it against me. But I was giving you broad education. But if you want to talk about the quality of education or the cultural aspects of education, let me give you an example. A friend of mine has a daughter who's an English teacher teaching in an upstate county, one contiguous to not this county, but one next to this county. I'll let you guess where it is. He texts me one day and he says his daughter calls him up and said there was a girl in her English class that was speaking in a Ebonics type dialect and said something like "that coat be mine" or something like that. It was a butchered form of English, and she corrected that child for using incorrect English and told her how to say it, and was chastised and brought to the principals by the administration because she could not correct that girl because it was a cultural dialect. Can you imagine a French teacher if you misuse the French language and they try to correct you on proper French grammar? If you want to talk colloquially on the street and use bad grammar, that's your business. But a teacher's job is to teach you correct English. That is in a conservative upstate county. Also, who sits on the library boards and who lets a lot of this curriculum come in to our schools or to public libraries matters. I think the values of local communities, especially local school boards, should be reflected in the administration of those libraries and or public libraries. So because I didn't talk about that before doesn't mean it's not an issue to me. Absolutely. The type of people I'm going to put on the State Education Library Board are going to reflect the values that many of us in this room share. Another thing is the superintendent of education, Miss Weaver, who all of you elect, she's the recording secretary for the State Board of Education, but doesn't even get a vote on it, right? I would like to empower the superintendent of education, which is the state's top teacher, to have more authority and more power. Years ago, we looked at putting the superintendent under the governor. Y'all rejected that on a constitutional ballot. I would have thought it would have been a good idea, but you didn't want it. So let's at least empower the top teacher in the state to take schools into receivership and shake them loose when they refuse to follow the laws that we pass. And a lot of them are violating the laws or violating the regulations that we get passed through our education system. So we got to hold them accountable, and we got to have more sunlight on them.
All right. Well, my daughter is a teacher down in Chapin, and it's her hands are tied.
Like my friend's daughter, absolutely.
Yeah. So, anyways, anything you can do, whatever, I appreciate it, and I'm sure we all do. I'm sure we all got our knuckles busted at some point.
Yeah.
From growing up.
Was that it? Yeah, I was going to kind of wrap things up. Folks, I want to say this. Yes, sir. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, sir, that may be a bad idea, but is it a bad idea to raise it for discussion? Do you not want to throw every idea on the table and let it be vetted? That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And you disagree with me. And again, it may be a bad idea, but the whole point is do you not even want to talk about every idea to establish which ones are good or bad? That's all I'm doing. Let me close. Folks, things are going to be nasty this next week. I've already seen commercials run against me. I'm the worst person on the planet. I'm doing horrible, hateful, corrupt, and I've been accused of everything under the sun. And I can tell you right now, there's been no candidate who's been more investigated than me. I've had more complaints filed against me at the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, the Ethics Commission, and lawsuits filed against me. You know what? Every single one of them gets thrown out because they're all frivolous. And you're going to see commercials this week blasting me. And the reason you're seeing these negative commercials is because the other side is seeing the same poll numbers that I've seen in the last 2 days. And their campaign is about tearing me down. My campaign is going to be about lifting you up. Okay? I've never professed to be a perfect person. And I told you at the beginning of my speech, I will make mistakes. And like this gentleman in the front row who says I'm dead wrong. I may be dead wrong at times, but I'm going to give you every idea that I have, and let's socialize it and quality control it together, and let me give you your government back. And that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. You come on up here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your Attorney General. I'm humbly asking you for your vote on Tuesday. I would be honored to have your vote. And even if I wasn't your first choice candidate, I will never forget that the office of governor belongs to you, not me, and that I only would hold it as a trustee for you, the people of South Carolina. And the day that I don't act like that, the day that I act like it's my office and not yours, is the day you should throw me out on the street. Folks, God bless you, and I appreciate you being here today. Love you guys. Mean it.
I will just say this, Mr. Attorney General. I've been dead wrong in the eyes of Royal Miller more times than you. Just saying. Curmudgeon from New Jersey. Yep. All right. So here's what I want to challenge this group to do. One, Cody Simpson is going to stick around and answer questions because I cut him off. And I want to say this, and I said this at camp a few weeks ago. I took not 5 to the polling place. I said 50. And then it went to 56, and then it went to 70. Listen, think about the tentacles that your life touches. We don't even know, but I think if I ask in this crowd, because we are all voters, we all got phone calls. Who do I vote for? Who do I vote for? Don't wait for the phone calls. Call the people in your Bible study. One quick story, and then I'm going to quit. We have the oldest lady who is now a widow because we actually lost one, 81 years old. She told me, Becky, I wasn't even going to go vote. I don't know who to vote for. She watches the wrong TV station. What can I say? Anyway, she said, I wasn't even going to bother, but you gave me a list. Unashamedly, I just hand out the list because if they want to argue with me, I'll argue, but at least they know what to do. She said, I called my daughter, she has 4, and said, take me to go vote. What do you know, Mom? And she said, I have a list. And she said, then my other daughter called me, and my other daughter called me, and my other daughter called me, and they wanted the list. You don't know how far your list is going. In this room, I guarantee you, we are not all on the same list. That's okay. We are all patriots. We all go vote, and we all have a circle of accountability, and we owe it to those people in our circle to tell them what to do if they don't know. So I'm going to give this mic to Cody and let him take. We've got a few farmers in this group, Cody. They own chickens and raise tomatoes. And then I'm going to leave somebody in here to close because I'm going to run out. Thank you. And thank you, Cody, for being willing. You chicken owners, ask Cody your questions. I can't answer them.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I am very happy to hear that because we have got to grow what we eat. So, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I'm not sure on our farm, we wouldn't have to worry about that. In the areas, I'm not too sure either. But I will say it is happening across America. Just mentioned earlier over in Abbeville with the raid that just happened near there. And I think that we've got to make sure that we know who is actually here in our country. You're here legally. I think that is something that we've got to make sure the president's doing in instituting with the Department of Homeland Security. We've got to make sure that these folks are here and they're, as you see, MS-13, unfortunate gang organizations that are wrong. They should not be here. We need to deport them back. And I think that's what we've got to make sure in our communities, that we are safe and secure as well.
Said that he didn't want a raid on his farm. So it's an issue. So
Oh,
I'm just letting you know.
Well, President Trump, in his statement when he endorsed me, said I was going to help send all the illegals back where they came from. So there you go. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Data centers. We have a real problem with data centers and all these subdivisions just taking over the state.
I couldn't agree with you more. So that is a big issue that I'm running on right now. It's happening right here in Spartanburg County. I think that you all saw that it was a big hoax and a joke. It wasn't even really a real project that was going to come to fruition, in my opinion. We've got to stop this use of our farmlands for solar and data centers. We've got to make sure that we protect our land timber as well, because again, once we lose our land, it's not going back into ag production. We've got to grow what we eat. I think that your Department of Agriculture, first and foremost, needs to highlight and educate our people before they make their decisions ongoing in that direction. I think it's very important that we know where our food comes from. But also we need to educate them, especially the solar. It's not efficient. There's nothing that grows out there. And I think also, in a sense, is that we've got to bring more markets and revenue to our farms so they will not even think about selling it to those big developments. Overdevelopment, we are paving over paradise right now. And we've got to stop it, because for every acre that we lose or we develop here in South Carolina, or lose it to solar or data or you name it, housing, that's another acre that we're depending on some foreign soil. And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we're even more dependent here in South Carolina. Close to 70% of all of our fruits and vegetables that we have, that we eat and consume here in the state, they're imported. We have got to stop it. Y'all mentioned COVID, and you mentioned the hurricanes. You think about any hurricane that happens, within a day, all the food's off the shelf. What are we doing in our own backyards? I was on a farm here recently, Spartanburg, with Backyard Chicken Farmer, and I think they sell their wares on the front porch. Well, I was talking with them about ways that we could eliminate these burdensome regulations where they can actually sell their products, but also I want to help them be able to sell at local markets too, in other towns. So we just have to highlight it. You can look on the president. When I worked for him at USDA, there's a report called Farm Security is National Security, and you can look at where the land has been taken up by the solar, and they have been, again, linked back to China. I know Silfab, not too far from here, had really brought the issue to light about what's actually in those panels, which is all of those chemicals, which I think should have never happened near the school there. 50,000 gallons of this, we don't know what kind of liquids. People did not know, and it was happening right there at their school. So we've got, I think, your Department of Agriculture, first and foremost, needs to be the caretaker of God's land. And I think that we need to highlight those conservation programs like Platt Moore did in Greenville not long ago. He protected his land for years to come, for his family to come back to. And I helped do that under Government Master. We work with the General Assembly because this office, as you've heard from everyone, we have a budget, we have to pass policy, we have to implement it. We're the executive branch. Well, I have the relationships at the State House. That's why I tell people often, the only one that has the relationship from the farmhouse to the State House to the White House. And those same relationships help build the Agriculture Working Lands Preservation Fund, which Representative Patrick Haddon, I was just on his farm, he helped author that and push it through. Well, I worked with them, and now we are implementing, and we have protected close to 5,000 acres of good working farmland. So I want to do that for the next generation. I also want to be able to use my tools that we had at USDA to help buy that land, because farmers want to expand, but they may not have the capital because of obviously the crisis that we're in right now. But I think we could utilize those tools and maybe even have a program at your department to help those young and beginning farmers purchase that land and have a consortium. Like if a farmer wanted to get out of farming, they had no way, they didn't have any children to give it to, we could, or rent it. We could have a consortium at the Department of Agriculture to have an area where they can go to do just that. So I want to take care of the next generation. The average age of the farmer has gone from 62 to 67. The statistics that I want to prove wrong on, and I want y'all to know this, is what makes me get up every single day to fight for our land in South Carolina, because I'm a fighter on, again, my family's been farming the same land since 1904, and we're going to fight every day to keep it. But y'all should know by 2040, it's a statistic that I think that I want to, again, prove wrong. By 2040, 70% of all American farmland is going to change hands. It's either going to go to development, solar, data, housing, or it's going to go to the next generation. And I choose the next generation because we have to care about where our food comes from. We have to support local. And it all goes back to your education. All of this ties back to agriculture. I talked to our superintendent of education, Ellen Weaver, who's been very supportive in the idea of bringing ag back to the classroom. And not just a one school here, one school there. I want to do it across the state, and I want our farmers to be engaged in that. And so that's another big issue that I care about deeply. So I appreciate you, because I think more and more people need to talk about protecting our land, because once it's gone forever. Those communities are gone, and we gotta realize, okay, back to basics. What makes our communities and what makes my community home branch, and what I'm highlighting to people is what I grew up on, is what made our community, is our farms, our schools, and our churches. That is what made our community. And when those are not there, you don't have a community, in my opinion. So we've got to get back to those understanding of we got to protect our communities. We got to protect our own backyard. Because as I mentioned earlier, with this Chinese threat, China has over 800 acres right now owned in South Carolina. North Carolina, they have over 49,000 acres. And if we continue to allow it, we may end up being like them. And we got to stop it. We got to protect our land. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. There's issues that come to my attention recently about dumping chemicals in the upper atmosphere, aluminum, boron, strontium, that can affect agriculture. And I have pictures of it, taking the difference between contrails and chemical trails.
Yes, sir.
This is happening. Is there anything that you can do or would do in order to help curtail this or prevent it from happening?
Well, I agree with you. There are reports out there. The Environmental Protection Agency is studying that right now under President Trump, Mr. Zell. And also, it does not particularly fall underneath my jurisdiction, if you will, of the regulatory function. But I don't think that should stop me or anybody in this position from advocating for our health and wellness and working with the current state departments right now. You have the Department of Environmental Services that could also work hand in hand with the EPA. I want to make sure that our airways, we're growing what we eat here. We've got to make sure that whatever's up there is safe or needs to be stopped or whatever in that manner. Your department in some states also has the pesticide regulatory function. This department doesn't. It works with Clemson. It falls under Clemson. So I've worked with those people in the past. Again, it may not be particularly in my area that I can affect, if you will, but I don't ever let that stop me. I think that we still have a problem that we have to address. This problem seems to not go away. And there are still, again, your government, we need to be transparent and find out. I don't care if they say, well, it's not the state's airways, it's the federal. Well, I don't care. We need to find it out and get to the root of the problem.
Yes. They, of course, are dumping it in the federal airways, but that all settles down.
Oh, yes, sir. This is our land. And I care about South Carolina. So I agree with you, sir. I like your flag, by the way.
Oh,
very patriotic.
George kind of stole my thunder there, because I was gonna ask about that, but more directly, have you personally tested? I'm still kind of a skeptic about all that, but have you personally tested soil and found these materials in the soil in your farms? I don't know if you've done that or not. I'd like to know I'd like to get some real evidence that this is really happening in our soil. We we're mini farmers. We got a couple of big gardens, and there's nothing better than eating your own stuff.
Oh, that
It tastes
tomato off the
fantastic.
vine, and your children and grandchildren. I was just talking with someone earlier where their little girl was able to eat a cucumber for the first time. I think that's from her garden. I think that's wonderful.
So the question is, have you personally encountered any of these materials in your own soil? I don't know if you've had it tested for any of those toxic materials that are supposedly coming out of the sky.
Yes, sir. We haven't, but we do soil testing, especially when it comes to alpha toxin with the state. The Department of Agriculture on our farm, we have to make sure that we have a good corn supply, because a lot of what we grow is actually put into our feed mills and then processed. It goes to the poultry plants around the state mainly. So we have what's called field corn, not the corn that you eat out of the grocery store, if you will, sweet corn. But there are some, for us, for soil testing, there was a dilemma that unfortunately during the last disaster, we had the drought and the hurricane. We were having to send our alpha toxin soil samples to North Carolina because South Carolina didn't have it. And it was at the lab. I think there were some issues back and forth there. I'm not sure. I want to, again, look into that. We need to have that ability to test our own soil. We should not be depending on anybody else. I want to advocate to expand the lab that's right here in South Carolina. And I want to be personally involved to make sure that we are taking care of whether what farm you're on. I keep hearing that folks, well, you're just a homesteader, or you're just growing a few acres or whatever, and we don't have programs. We need to focus. I said, no, hold on a second. No, we need to change that, because we need to be taking care of you and your family. The government should not be in the way, again, of choosing the haves and have-nots. We need to have that access. If you want to test your soil, you should have the ability to do that, because you're paying for it. Your taxes are paying for it. So I want to change that mindset. I'm not saying that the current department's doing it. I'm saying as a whole agriculture industry, we got to get away from this huge focus on big ag, this consolidation. We need to be getting back to your point, we need to have our own gardens. We need to be able to have our canneries. The canneries are still very successful in Georgia. What happened to our canneries? They went away because it was not supported. Colleton County has its own cannery and a kitchen, and it also has a way for our food trucks to be located out of there. I just think that we need to, again, bring those services to you on your farm. And I'm with you. We need to be able to test our soil to make sure that material is not in there, because we're, like you stated, you're growing your own food. You want to make sure it's not getting in your body.
That's right.
So
that's right. Man, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And just so you're aware, if you do want to test your soil, Clemson Extension has a soil sampling project that you can go by the office. You can Google Clemson Extension. Every county has an extension office. You can have them either test, or you can put it it's a brown bag. I remember helping them do it, and you put it in and you send it off, and they'll send you back the results.
Yeah, I've actually done that with Clemson, but I understand that there's another firm that actually tests for toxins. And
Yes, sir.
And that I don't remember what that firm is.
Well, we want to again bring that solution to our people, because people want to know that none of that is happening and going to be contaminating their soil.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kind of follow up on that. I also have been keeping up a good bit with what's going on with the chemtrails and data centers and other things. With the chemtrails, I know Representative Lee Gilreath has done a good bit of research in the last 5 or 6 years and has tested, I believe he's tested his soil, has been with people that have tested their bloods as well as water, and have found the chemicals that have been sprayed in the air,
wow,
in the water, and in their blood, and on the soil. In fact, they already have, I've forgotten which country, but there's one country that has already patented an aluminum-ready corn and soybean seed. So if you look at what damage was done during the hurricane, a lot of the oaks were damaged, as opposed to what you typically would see would be the pines. a lot of that is because of the toxic air and soil that has been in the ground, where the root system is like the crown system, it's dying. That has repercussions, obviously, for all of us with that. So I hope you will look further into that and research it well, because it is a big concern and it has been verified. Dane Wigington has spent 20 years with Geoengineering Watch verifying a lot of it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I do, that really brings me to what I believe your government should be doing. Regardless of what department, you still need the service and we still need to be protected. I think it's the folks who are in the government to make sure that you are provided that. And I want to make sure that we bring together a committee. Maybe it is underneath the Department of Environmental Services. They currently don't have an ag committee because they are actually regulating and inspecting. But I do think we need to bring those folks together, to your point, from Department of Natural Resources, from Department of Agriculture, from Department of Environmental Services, Clemson, anybody who touches that space, just like we're studying our water tables right now, studying the surface and groundwater is what the department, or it was Water SC, you can look that up. I think the same thing needs to be with our air quality, to your point, and also with a lot of, I'm sure, Representative Gilreath, I believe he still has some cows too. So, I mean, those cows are drinking that water. So it's not just, that's why I try to remind people about protecting land and protecting our resources. We got to have land for our animals to eat too.
It's in our food supply.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much for that. And you've got my assurance on that. We will do that.
Just real quickly.
Yes, sir.
You cannot buy in most of the grocery stores in this area a tomato that was made in the Carolinas or even the United States. That come from Mexico and Canada. Why is it with our climate we can't grow tomatoes and all these other vegetables? Why are we importing them from elsewhere? I don't understand that.
Well, to your point earlier, and what I was mentioning is that we have consolidated so much that those buyers are coming from other sources. Their distribution centers are not here either. They're buying them in, and they're not even including our South Carolina growers. So you look at Charleston, for example, the company Lipton still grows tomatoes. We have one of the best climates, to your point, to grow them. We also had a lot of small town farmers down there that still grow them, and they can sell direct. But if you look at any of your grocery stores, especially like Walmart, again, this big consolidation, there's no way for a local farmer to sell to a Walmart or to a Food Lion. I grew up with Piggly Wiggly, but unfortunately, Piggly Wiggly is actually closing. It closed. I was just at my old Piggly Wiggly in Somerton. We were buying direct from the grower. And so that was something I remember when I was working at Piggly Wiggly, that we would buy from the local farmer. That's not happening anymore. The certified SC grown is a great process. I think that we can actually encourage buying local. I want to incentivize that. So like you mentioned, we're not buying tomatoes from Mexico, Brazil, because once it gets on that ship, or it gets, again, that the days of the shelf life, we already know the nutrition is gone. It really is important for us to make sure we bring that infrastructure back. We invest local. We invest in farmers markets. We invest in that distribution center to help those small producers or even larger ones to sell to our grocery stores here in South Carolina, and have it easier for the government's not weaponized to close down our certified roadside markets, which they just passed. Representative Haddon did, where the county governments were not giving them permits to build their facilities. Well, in my opinion, that's limiting your rights to eat or to buy local. And so there were a lot of issues that were happening. Not in the government, that's not their business. They need to get out of the way, and more importantly, we need to have options. So I agree with you. We need to really look into that, because this consolidation, if we allow it to continue, we'll be importing, instead of 70%, we'll be importing all of our food. And I want to, again, bring that down, those costs down, to help the farmer be able to sell local.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All righty. Thank y'all very much. You can go to my website, codyforsc.com. I encourage you to go vote again. You've heard from all of our great folks. Appreciate them hosting because it is very important that we get out and vote again, especially in the Republican primary. So thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
I am going to throw out one last hard question for Cody. Where do we get more of these sunflower seeds?
Hey, and these are not bad seeds, they're good seeds.
All right, good.
We got plenty in the back.
Non-GMO and all that good stuff.
That's right. They're not from China.
very, very good. Thank you. We want to just thank everybody for coming out. Frank still lost his voice, so I got sucked into this. But thank you for the Spartanburg GOP for carrying the weight. Thank you for our AV guys for what you've done. We really appreciate it. Y'all done a yeoman's work. It's fantastic. The questions were great. Everybody from we had great questions from Spartanburg and great questions from some of our Greenville people. So I'm going to go home and go to sleep for the rest of the weekend. So thank y'all for everything. We're out. Thanks, sir.